Hey, Will, I'm checking to see if you have everything ready for the celebration.
It's coming.
How someone could be out.
Yeah. Cool. So thank you for coming on, dude. It's been so right now. So Zach has been here for at least 2 hours. We've been chit chatting about all kinds of stuff, talking about war stories and talking about what you do for a living and everything. And dude, I recently talked about you in a podcast.
Hey, that's okay.
I had Jamie Warwick on, and when I had him on, I criticized you a little bit about some of the things that you were saying. But go ahead and introduce yourself. Talk about who you are, where you live, and why you're passionate about what you're doing. So, for those of you who don't know, Zach is the spokesperson for the recall for Jesse Nelson in Lynn Haven.
Yeah, so the effort recently just started. Actually, we just got news yesterday that all of our campaign documents are submitted to the supervisor elections. We are officially a committee now, and we get to do the fun stuff. Now we really get to get rolling. But to give you a little bit of backstory, my name is Zach Detwiler. I came into the movement, if you'll call it, a couple of months ago. I was brought in by some people that were already working on it. And I have my own personal passionate reasons that we can get into for my distrust of the mayor and the policies of the city and things like that. But what really drew me to the movement is, like everybody else in the city, we're tired of it. But I'm one of those people that I got to act, right? I can't just sit around and say, hey, someone else is going to pick it up for us. It's just not the way I'm built. So after months and months and years of research and digging through FBI files and interviews and whistleblowers and everything like that, I came to the conclusion that, me personally, I think this is an effort worth taking up. And I think that if the city, the residents knew what really was going on, let's for a second say that nothing criminal went on. It's just a lack of good practice, right? Can the city sustain and survive itself with bad practices much longer? We'll get into all that and why that's important, but let's take out the oohs and ahs of the illegal part. If the city goes broke, if the city's spending money on things that the commission didn't prove, if other things like that are going on behind the scenes and the commission can't hold Vickie Gaynor or anybody else accountable, then, she can just do whatever she wants. And so when you look at that and you look at the mayor, who's supposed to be the front man of this commission and asking the tough questions and getting involved, because he gets paid more than the rest of the commissioners. So it's his responsibility to almost make this a part-time job, and he doesn't. And so, we'll go through a lot of it, but that's really where I got to at the point of, you guys may not know this in the city, but certainly after you look at everything that's out there, it's hard not to just have a burning passion to want to get them out of there.
Yeah, one of the things. So one of the things that I've criticized on it, especially about these recalls.
Yeah.
And we talked about it a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't agree with the numbers aspect of it, where it's like you got to get 10% of the registered voters, especially when only 14% or 13% show up.
Yeah.
That just seems like, and I told you, I said 50% of the 13% should be kind of like I feel like it's an impossible number to hit. And I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't think it's gonna be successful. I don't. But
we're going to change your mind tonight. That's what we're going to do.
Well, so explain the recall, like how a recall works, because a lot of people don't understand. Because one of the things, and I'm going to let you express like what it takes to do that, but also what you have to find to be able to do it. So you're going on incompetence and negligence.
So the technical term is misfeasance and malfeasance. So there's 7 things that you can basically claim as your reasoning behind proceeding forward with the petition. So we start with the petition, and then we'll get into the actual election portion of it. So there's 7 things that you can get on. There's misfeasance, malfeasance. If you commit a felony, that's kind of how Margot was gone, even though I disagree with that, but that's how she's gone. Drunkenness is one of the options, and there's a couple others. Misfeasance is just not knowing what you're supposed to be doing up there, and you show gross incompetence and negligence in your actions. And we can go through kind of what those things are, but he's displayed them dozens of times. We've all seen it. Then you get into malfeasance, which is actually the act of doing things that are either illegal or improper. And so that's where malfeasance gets into. And so, again, taking the whole criminality portion out of this discussion, it's very plausible that he's committed misfeasance a dozen times, cutting people off from talking, not allowing motions by, let's say, Jamie Warwick or some of the other commissioners, not even holding Vickie's feet to the fire when it comes to some of these things that are getting passed, to telling Sam, shh, quiet down, you're not allowed to talk right now. All of those things, that's all misfeasance. So there's going to be a specific thing. So with the petitions, you choose one thing that you want to go after, you put it on the petition, then that's where we have to go out and get the signatures. So we're probably 2-3 weeks away from the petition being official, it being submitted with the clerk, and then we go out and start getting these signatures. We're really trying to get the month of July for us to be able to sign these things. We have 30 days from the first signing signature, because you sign it, put a date on it.
Yeah.
30 days from that time to collect all 1,600 signatures that we need. At that point, those are sent to the city clerk, which happens to be Vickie Gaynor. She has to go through all those, authenticate those signatures and personnel or residents to voters and voter IDs. Once that's all validated, just like an election, it's sent to supervisor of elections. They validate the count that Vickie did, and Bob's your uncle. You have, petition 1 down. Then you're given 5 days where the mayor can just resign. He goes, I'm going to deal with this. I don't want to deal with it anymore. And I resign. We could only be so lucky.
Yeah, so there's a lot of moving pieces behind what you just said. So let's go back to the beginning of that, where it's like the dozen malfeasance. You said there's like a dozen accounts of this, right?
Sure.
So one of the ones that you brought up was like him putting up his hand up to Sam and not allowing him to speak, and just being like, hey, I'm in the middle of talking right now. I do believe that, Sam's a grown man, so he needs to learn how to speak up and be able to say something and be able to say, hey, no, I'm a commissioner just like you, and I can speak up. That's on Sam. So taking that aspect out of it and actually giving, the other sources, give me some of those examples.
Okay. So let's talk about during the whole Ricky Ramey argument, right? You had Jamie, who tried to pass a motion to discuss it, do a few things, potentially remove him. I forget exactly what the motion was, but we've pulled the video before. And he goes and starts to make a motion. He says, I want to make a motion to do this. And the mayor goes, all right, explain it a little bit better so we know what motion you're trying to make. Then they start an off-the-cuff discussion about it. And after the mayor feels like Jamie's had enough time to express himself, he doesn't even call for a second or anything else like that. He just moves on in the meeting. Well, the commission as a whole is an at-large body, which means that every resident gets to vote for every single commissioner if they want. It's not like Panama City where you have your wards or anything else like that. It's an at-large. So the mayor is elected by the same people that are elected by Jamie, that are elected by Sam and everyone else that's up there. So none of those commissioners up there have any less rights to move a motion than the mayor does. They all have equal rights to do that. Now, you have a strong mayor system where the mayor can come in and say, X, Y, or Z, they're run different ways. Those strong mayor systems are different. That was the argument down in Mexico Beach. Here, he's a weak mayor. So other than being the chair of the meeting, which basically, just reads the stuff off and moves it along and does time minutes and stuff like that, he has no other authority at those meetings, yet he runs it like he's the Gestapo and he controls everything. So then you start looking at when he starts talking over residents and denying them of their First Amendment rights to speak because they're allotted 3 minutes. You can't interrupt me, you need to speak. We can talk about times where, me individually, he called me out during his mayor's speech. They get Agenda 5, I think it is, where the mayor gets time to talk and so do the commissioners. He called me out by name, Mr. Detwiler. You are a liar. You are incorrect. And started calling me out for a bunch of stuff.
He called you a liar.
He called me a liar. That is slander. By definition, that's slander.
Yeah, if you can't prove it.
Even if you can, there's certain things that you can't do as an elected body official that you can as an individual citizen. If he is at his church, individual citizen.
Yeah.
If he is acting as the mayor in any capacity, whether it's at an event or on that board, you're an elected official at that point. You have to play by different rules. You don't get the same rules. You have to sit there and take what everyone says and accept it because you voluntarily signed up for that role.
Yeah.
So you start looking at those. You start looking at, some of the motions that have been made, some of the things that have been pushed through, and we're not even to the Ricky Ramey situation or the budgets or the city clerk debates or anything else like that. We're just talking about his inability to manage a meeting and treat people like adults. That right there alone falls under misfeasance. Malfeasance gets into the fact where, things were passed or stuff was done that was known to be wrong or potentially could be known to be wrong, like development orders and things like that. And now all of a sudden, are you a part of something bigger where you were trying to push this through because, it needed to get done for your own career outside of the city? So there's a lot involved with it. With a petition, you only need one thing that they've done. He has the right to try to argue it in court. He has the right to try to do other things. But at the end of the day, the citizens get to say, either we're going to recall him or we're not. And it comes down to the vote. So, a lot of people you say, hey.
But it does come down to the aspect of what is there. So the malfeasance, so what you were just
Misfeasance,
explaining,
yeah.
misfeasance is, so him interrupting people when they speak, him interrupting a commissioner, him saying, so that all of those things fall in line with being able to recall somebody?
Yes. You only
Okay,
need
cool.
one. You only need one instance.
Okay. So that's enough.
Yes.
And so now jumping on top of that, though,
Yeah.
give some of those examples that are even worse. So, let's go into those orders that you were talking about.
Those development orders.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah,
So, and we can kind of get in deep in this, once we get down and we kind of release some of the other stuff. But there was a development order for a Grease Pro. It's a couple 100 feet from my house. It's in College Point. That's going in at 390 in Harvard. And I'm sure a lot of people in Lynn Haven over the years have heard about the Grease Pro because it was everywhere.
Yeah.
But really, when it gets down to it, is again, let's take the illegality potential out of this discussion and just talk about the fact that he took a campaign donation, $1,000 campaign donation from the person who was submitting the development order less than 8 days later.
Which $1,000 is the max.
Is the max. So if you're saying $1,000, you're all in on that candidate. I mean, you 100% are, this is my boy.
Yeah.
And that was the owner of both the construction company and the Grease Pro that's doing it, Aaron Lovett. He made a $1,000 donation on February 16th of 23. And that date's going to be important later. But so he submits, that donation. Okay, let's say, hey, I'm just a longtime member. I like who you are, Mayor. Great. Okay. Then we get into, things like the planning meeting where Amanda cuts people off at 3 minutes, but she didn't have the authority to because it's an elected body by the commission and not a part of the city.
Go into that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess, all right, let's do you want to do the whole 360 or the Grease Pro 390 thing?
Like, dude, this is your time. I mean, you own that mic for as long as you sit there. So my whole thing is like, I mean, if you like, dude, go into detail on the different things, the different aspects of why. I mean, because, as a citizen and having the right to speak and things like that. And
Sure.
you kind of told me a little bit of how those meetings work.
Yeah.
Because it's not a commission meeting.
It's not.
It's a
board meeting, and the boards are appointed by the commission, right? So you have two different acting bodies. You have the elected body, which is your commission, same thing as like Congress or something like that. And then you have your city manager, which would act maybe more like a president, where it's a single executive type of thing, except for this fact that the city manager is hired by the commission.
Yeah.
So the city can't interfere with commission business. The commission is elected. You can't tell the residents, representatives what they can do as a city. That is immoral. 100%. I don't know if a single blue-blooded American that's going to believe that a hired personnel should be able to tell my elected official what to do. But, with these development orders, we brought 100 people to don't need to
You
spill
know,
it.
you're very animated when you speak, so
Yeah.
I was like, I could just see this like happening. Like it's gonna
all
get
over it. All over it.
like, dude, I got like $16,000 worth of it. And I'm just kidding. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
So you have development order that gets submitted, goes through the process, goes through the planning department. They figure out, did you lay out the land right? Did you follow all the ordinances? Did you do everything that you were supposed to? Then the first stage of evaluation by a secondary body would be the planning board. The planning board is basically seated, if you will, by the commission. So every single person on this board had to be voted on by the commission to join this board. Then once they're on the board elects its own chair, organizes itself within its own meeting rights, but its power is derived from the commission. So for a city employee to come in and change any bit of that process would be the city impugning on the commission's ability to manage that process. That is not allowed. So what ended up happening in this meeting is we brought 100 people to this meeting. Half a College Point came. Every single one of my neighbors, everybody that we knew. There were over 100 people in this room. It was standing room only at a certain point. I get up there to speak. I have a 50-page document that I've prepared that we're going to go through parking ordinances, traffic ordinances, flooding ordinances, the fact that he land cleared without a permit, the whole 9 yards. And then I start speaking, and 3 minutes in, Vickie, who is the assistant planner for Amanda, stands up and goes, "Sorry, your time's up." She's doing it on her phone, stopwatch. "Sorry, the time's up." I go, wait, there's no time requirements. The board didn't approve it. The chair of the meeting didn't set any time frames or anything like that. But now a city official is trying to stop my ability as an affected party, because I only live 200 feet away, from describing to them where they failed at their job. Interesting. Okay. I thought not much of it. I was like, all right, maybe they're trying to be orderly. You never want to think the worst.
Like speak up in the middle of it and you go, show me where that's written.
Yeah.
Show me the document
Absolutely.
that says I can't speak anymore.
Listen, I like to follow the rules. I mean, for the most part, I like to follow the rules
And
as
if
much
you would
as
have known
possible.
that that was the rules, you probably would have condensed the shit.
Oh, absolutely. I would have
Yeah.
gone to the best 3 of them and been like, this building doesn't have ADA compliance. The wheelchair, you're going to have to drive the wheelchair from the back all the way around the building with no sidewalks.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell me a disabled vet's going to be able to do that, please. So we called out ADA, we called out traffic things, we called out a whole bunch of different stuff. They cut us down to 3 minutes. I had to argue with the lawyer, the city lawyer, to be like, you don't have the legal authority.
Who was the lawyer at the time?
Let's same one now.
Okay.
Yeah, same one now. I forget her name, but she was up there. So it's the same, so they know the law. They know what they're supposed to be doing. But the city lawyer's job is to mitigate risk to the city. They have no fealty to the commission. They have no fealty to the citizens. They are
don't
there.
have a say.
No, but they are hired by the city manager.
Yeah.
Well, really, they're hired by the commission, but they're run by the city manager to mitigate risk for the city.
That's one of the things that has really pissed me off through a lot of the different things that I've seen through the city. Everything is kind of like opened up in like this, you're scared of getting sued. It's like when you're an elected official.
Yep.
And I know this is getting off topic from what you're talking about, but
Let's
when
rabbit
you,
hole.
when you bring up the attorney aspect of it,
Yep.
I believe that they've caused more harm than good, because it's
A lot of
like,
times.
dude, it's like everybody's always scared of getting sued nowadays. And then it's a way to kind of like keep commissioners and people under your thumb of like what not to say and what to say. And the whole thing about it is like when you're elected and you're up there at the dais, like you're speaking for the people.
Yep.
And the people's voice that live in the community
Yep.
should supersede
100%.
your advisement.
That's our entire republic. That is how the system is set up.
Yeah.
So let's go down the lawyer rabbit hole for a second. So imagine a scenario where everyone on the commission, or in one way or another, is afraid to do anything and deny a development order because they're being told by the planning manager or engineers that this is up to snuff, regardless of whether you can prove that it's not. It's up to snuff. So now you have city officials saying it's up to snuff, it passes everything that we need. So now you have a harder argument to make that we need more engineering analysis to go over everything that was said by an individual like me. The other question that I have is, at what point is the lawyer telling commissioners you have to go for and mitigate our biggest liability? So if a commercial entity has the money to sue you tomorrow versus 10 residents that would have to empty their savings and go find a lawyer and do the whole thing, and it could be months, who's the bigger liability?
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's illegal or not.
It doesn't. It's all about liability.
Yeah.
So now we get to an interesting question, is if the lawyer's job is to mitigate liability and bring that liability to the commission, by the way, because they've had multiple meetings where they've told commissioners, hey, you need to limit the liability. Well, isn't the city being sued by James Finch and Mike Gordon and Margo Anderson and a whole bunch of people right now? Where's the limiting of liability for that? Could Vickie Gaynor actually be culpable if, Chris Forehand's testimony gets out? If that's the case, how is she not the bigger liability now to the city? Because the city's an entity. It is not an individual.
Well, it's going to come down to money.
It's going to come down to money.
Yep.
Who's going to pay more? Is it easier to fire her, or is it easier to, go with the lawsuits and pay those off? So it will be interesting to see.
Well, that goes back to the whole saying about the reason why guys don't get divorces. It's like, it's cheaper to keep her.
Well, in a lot of ways it is. I mean, if the legal system is set up to be in favor of, let's say, a business that, yes, has the money to go through a long litigated lawsuit versus a bunch of homeowners, it's always going to favor the commercial entity over the residential entity, unless you have commissioners that are allowed to speak their piece without being shushed by a mayor or quieted by a lawyer or told by the city manager that her people did their job. Now, let's say that she's, maybe pushing the thumb on them a little bit and pushing them in a direction that you need to do this. So find a way to say yes that you can live with.
So I will say this, because, I've had both Jesse and Vickie on.
Yeah.
And so I actually like both of them. They're
personable people.
Personable people.
Yep.
But I also have this saying, right? Like, a lot of people, they talk shit about the show and they're just like, oh, this guy likes this guy. Listen, check this out. Like, you never really know somebody. Like, I don't go to bed with either one of them. I don't sleep next to either one of them, so I don't know them. No. I got brothers that I was served in the military with, and I can tell you I know every aspect.
Yeah. When you know what they smell like, you know who they are.
I know who they are. Yeah. And so I don't know who they are. Yeah. But what I do know is like, a lot of the things that are here, do you believe that it's negligence on the fact that, do you think that it's purposeful? Or do you believe that they're actually because sometimes I think that people make mistakes.
Does it matter?
Well, so the law is blind, right? So I gave you this example earlier, right? If I take my boat out and I go out into the Gulf of Mexico and it's not snapper season, and I come back with 6, big sows, right?
It is the Gulf of America.
Oh, sorry, my bad. Gulf of America.
Thanks for correcting us.
Thank you for correcting me on that. If I go out into the Gulf of America and I catch a couple big sow, like red snappers, and I bring it back in, FWC checks my live well, and they're like, they're not going to give a shit. They do not care if I knew that it wasn't snapper season or not.
They don't care if you're a tourist from Tennessee.
Yeah, they don't care if it was the right link, the right whatever. Like, you broke the law, you're gonna have to eat it. And so on that aspect, I agree with you.
So let's take it a step further. Again, with this whole conversation, let's take legalness out of it. Let's say that they didn't violate laws. Okay. Let's just say that they are incompetent and negligent. For lack of a better words, they are incompetent and negligent at their positions. They might be smart individuals, but they are either incompetent or negligent at their positions. Does the effect on the citizens and the loss of money due to incompetence change between the two of them? Whether they purposely move the money, accidentally move the money, thought they were doing the right thing but didn't do the right thing, and ECS stole $5 million, does it matter? The effect is the same on the residents. And so whether we talk about Vickie walking out of the city with a box in her hands, or we talk about Vickie walking out of the city in an orange jumper and handcuffs, it's irrelevant to the part of, is she doing her job properly or not? Because if she's not, the residents are still the victims of her negligence.
So that the argument that's made is, the crime rate still continues to go down. The debt has gone down. We've paid a lot of the debt down.
At what cost?
What do you mean by that?
Well, okay, we all have, we all have family budgets that we have to make. Let's say we go on a family vacation. We thought we were going to spend $2,000. We spend $4,000. Well, that $2,000 still got to come from somewhere. That extra $2,000 that we didn't budget for. So, are we not eating out? Are we just going to drive around less? Are we not going to get shoes that we're not going to pay for? Okay, let's put it on a big scale. Do we have money to hire new police officers? Do we have money for new fire truck and fire equipment? Because the fire stations are, underfunded. If you want to put trees in parks, if you're paying off all these $10 million loans and everything like that, where did the money come from? Where did you get the money to do all this payoff?
I think that was one of the things that you were talking about earlier was
Yeah.
transferring funds
Yeah.
and then not bringing it before the commission, which is a big, in my opinion, that's a
Yeah.
big no-no. It's got to go against their charter, right?
Yeah, well, maybe. Let's find out what was done. Maybe she's with.
You'd have to know,
realm.
and we talked about that earlier, about transferring of funds without bringing it before the commission.
Yeah.
And so 100%, I'm like, dude, you can't freaking do that.
So let's
But the
get
thing
in-
about it is what does the charter say that they're allowed to do?
So here's a great example. This was in Beverly Waltrip's whistleblower account that we had sent out. James mailed this whistleblower account to all 8,200 voter households in Lynn Haven. You should be getting them this week. This 6/12, so sometime this week. But it's all like 11 pages of the finance director's whistleblower testimony on what Vickie Gaynor and Michael White were doing between 2020, was it 2018 and 2020? So one of the charges in there, I lost my train of thought of where we were going, but what were we talking about?
My question,
transfer of money.
So my question on all of it is a lot of these things that might be the issue, like saying the transferring of funds.
Sure.
We call that negligence, or we call that,
Sure.
you didn't bring it before the commission. You didn't get it approved before the commission. What are you doing?
Yeah.
But then again, at the same time, you really have to look at things and say, well, is that something that she has to do?
So here's a great example.
How much power?
Yep.
And so this goes into maybe the city manager does have too much power to where she's able to do that thing, and that should be something that's reconstructed into policy.
And that is one of the arguments that Jesse made, with the city clerk thing that I actually did agree with, is if you can't hold them in power right now, then what do you need to put in place to do it? Well, if you can't ever get a motion made to keep them, from doing X, Y, or Z, then how are you ever going to put those things in place? So it's kind of a double-edged sword with Jesse. But the thing what I want to talk about with the whistleblower account. So I think it was they were working on the fiscal year for 2020, but it was 2019 when it happened, I believe. Vickie takes the budget as acting city manager in front, and this is according to Beverly Waltrip, the finance director at the time. This is her accounts, not my.
No,
coming off of her.
I'm tracking. Yep.
So the first budget goes through, the first hearing of the budget. Police budget is X. The second hearing of the budget, Judy's looking through it and goes, wait, the police budget jumped by $20,000. What's it for? And Vickie goes, oh, it's just some accounting stuff. We moved some stuff around. She goes, no, hold on. What's it about? Oh, well, we had promised Ricky Ramey a raise prior to that. So, and we realized that we hadn't put it in. HR brought it to my attention. So we went ahead and added it in. Okay, well, you didn't mention that between the first and second readings. You changed the budget.
Here's the thing, though, and this is the reason I'm trying to keep this a clean episode because this is like one of those professional ones. But so bear with me as I try to put together the words.
Sure.
I'm trying to take out all the expletives before I speak. You want to talk about transparency,
Yeah.
and then you're asked by a commissioner.
Yep.
And they say, "Hey, where did this come from?" And then your first response is,
It's a budget thing.
No. And no. Explain it. And so one of the things that I know we talked a little bit about Sam. If you go back to one of the meetings, I can't remember which one it was. He can't remember what he looked at whoever it was, and he was like, "Explain it to me like I'm an 8th grader." And it's like that's one of those things where it's like, explain it. Like,
Yeah.
don't blow it off. Don't try to act like it's not important.
Yeah.
No. Explain it to me.
Hey, listen, I do a lot of work with a lot of people, and I can tell you up front, if you have a good answer for something, you're going to give it right away.
Well, people that try to give huge, like these big, if you can't dumb it down to where a 6-year-old can understand it, you don't understand it.
Yep.
I still believe that 100%. I learned
100%.
that, being in the military.
Yeah.
Like, if you can't explain this to a 6-year-old
Yep.
and then be able to understand it, then you don't understand it. You should be able to break it down and be able to explain it. So, and I know I'm hitting on that really, really hard, but
But it's
something as big as that, where it's like, oh, this budget went up by $20,000. Well, okay, why?
Yeah.
Like, that you can't just say that's a budget.
Yeah.
You got to be able to explain that.
Yeah.
Like,
So you have something like that, right? Then we go into another interesting scenario, according to Beverly, where Judy Tinder, when she was there the first time back in 2019, requested a bunch of budget documents. She wanted to see what was going on. So talking about that accountability that Mayor Nelson brings up, well, what else do you want to see out of things? Well, I want to see budget documents.
yeah.
This was before his time, but still, it tracks. According to Beverly, she prepared everything, gave it to Vickie to, do the once over, make sure everything was right. Because remember, Vickie is the clerk as well as the city manager. So it is her job to validate all records. And Vickie goes, I don't think we're going to submit everything. I think we're just going to give her this. And you don't need to transfer this stuff over. And you're like, wait a second, why wouldn't we? And Vickie's like, just send this. Okay. So then.
So this was in a document that what'd you say her name was? I mean,
Judy Tinder.
But okay, Judy Tinder said that this
This is Beverly Waldrop. So this was the finance
Beverly
director.
said that Vickie had this conversation where she was just like, no, just give her this. Don't worry about giving her everything else.
Yeah. And so listen, in private industry, in the corporate world, that might fly because you have, stakeholders and everything else. And you're not a government. You don't have the reporting requirement in the private sector that you do in the public
but if
sector.
a commissioner asks for something, they
have
get
to.
everything that they want.
They are an elected official.
Yeah.
They should literally be able to walk into your records room and go, hand me the key, I'll be out when I'm done.
And so this, you say Beverly? Beverly, what was her position?
She was the finance director.
Okay.
So she was in charge of the numbers.
Okay.
And so she ended up going around Vickie and giving Judy the rest of the information. Now, whether there was anything even criminal or negligent in the numbers, the fact that there was a cover up and Vickie was just so willing to do it.
Well, you're also basing this off of one story account, so let's keep that in mind. Like there's 3 sides to every story.
Every story.
You got one story, you got
Absolutely,
and then you have the truth somewhere in the middle. So.
But then when you hear a story like this 20 times, then you start to go, okay, is it a pattern?
Yeah, that's when.
Now we're getting back to negligence, right? It's not that you're doing anything maybe criminal, but if you're negligently leaving out information to the people that you're supposed to report to, now we get back to the clerk argument of, well, maybe we do need a second person, because if we have now proof that not all the information has been provided to the commissioners, well, then what information isn't being given to them now?
Well, that's one of the things that I agreed with Jamie. When and Jamie really did he influenced a little bit about how I look at some things now. And so and again, man, having a podcast where I talk to every single person, it's so hard because you get to know but it's one of these things where it's I don't really like to play sides. I like to look at what both people are saying. A lot of things are opinionated on a lot of these things.
Oh, absolutely. Even with my stuff, even with our stuff, everybody in our committee right now has a different reason for wanting to do this. And I mean, everyone has their own opinions. Yeah.
So one of the things though that I like that Jamie had brought up was he makes a really good argument for having a city clerk, and it is and regardless, and listen, I've heard Jesse's argument on it, and sorry, man, I just don't. It doesn't pat. There needs to be checks and balances.
Yeah.
That was one of the major things that if you would have had proper checks and balances when everything went down in Lynn Haven.
Well, let's talk about that. Okay,
Yeah.
so Vickie Gaynor, who's now our city manager of Lynn Haven, she originally worked for the News Herald. Then she moved on to something else. Then she gets hired as an admin at the city, moves up to deputy city clerk / contracts manager under Michael White. So this is the person who's reviewing every contract before it leaves. This is the person who is making sure that Michael White signs what he needs to sign. This is the person who is documenting and recording everything. This is the person that all checks go through. So you're talking about a person who is seeing everything funnel through, and you didn't notice that $5 million was leaving the city? How? Because it wasn't her who actually reported the crime. It was another employee. So if you didn't find it, why not? And if you didn't find it, how do we trust anything that you say moving forward? Because again, let's take the criminality out of it. If you're so grossly negligent to miss $5 million leaving the account, how are you running a city right now? Let's talk about the fact that a while back there was a public records request made by a news agency to find out how much was in reserve when the whole thing happened with Panama City, how much is in reserve at each of the cities. The only one that didn't respond was Lynn Haven. And to this day, I don't think they've ever given an answer what's in reserve to the commissioners. Again, do you not know, or do you know and you don't want to answer? Without criminality, it's still negligence. So now you have to ask, well, where's money being spent? You know, I again, not facts, but a story. I heard a story from somebody who used to work for the city and I think is a very credible source. Tell me that there's the potential where the maintenance money for Bayou Park potentially maybe got moved to another park to plant trees or do some other landscaping. And then they were just going to backfill the money in the next budget year and stuff like that. And no one should know because they had a few more years of maintenance money to float. So let's say that story is even partly true. It's still within the Parks and Rec budget, but did you have the authority to do it? Same question with the speed bumps in Mowat Highland. Yes, it may have been in the budget.
Yeah.
Maybe it was in the budget, but did you have the authority to do it?
So I think that's one of the things, right? I think that's even come up with a couple of commissioners whenever I've had conversations with them where it's like, so what comes before us for us to make these decisions? Because here's the thing though, instead of asking those questions, go into the actual doctrine that you follow.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you're going to have to go into like the charter. You're going to have to
be a subject matter expert for your city.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of as much as, and, sorry, I mean, this isn't a slam on Jamie or Sam, but I think they ask a lot of questions and it's like, dude, it's in there.
Yeah.
Like, go look.
But you're also you're never going to get a straight answer from the city. You're not. A good running city would be able to tell you. A bad running city won't. Yeah. And so if all these questions are being asked without answers or, some information is being given, the mayor said it best. If someone's going to do a crime and they can just bring you any documents that they want and show you, hey, look, all the numbers are nice. Here's a budget. Do whatever we want. And then raise the budget by 20 grand or add this item in or do this thing or spend this, $1 million out of the 50-cent tax to go buy a fire truck potentially.
Yeah.
So if all those, again, everyone says, you can dismiss one thing, but when it's 20, 30, 40, 50, you keep on seeing the pattern every time something's done. Okay, how do you hold Vickie Gaynor accountable? Well, the mayor goes in and the mayor goes, I want to see this.
What's the saying, Kendall, for combat arms? It's like, first time is a... Yeah, you could say that. We actually, it's a tactical thing. It's like first time is a once in a lifetime thing. Second time's an anomaly. Third time's a pattern.
Yeah.
And so, if you start seeing patterns of the same thing over and over again, it's not going to take long before you're just like, dude, you're shitting in your bed everywhere you go, bro.
On our website and Facebook, you're going to see probably 20 videos that we're putting together right now that are going to come out. And we're not trying to add too much conjecture to it. It's just videos of Jesse up there, just being Jesse. Calling Jamie a racist, basically, because the Colin Kaepernick post, calling, other people names and stuff like that, calling me a liar, talking over people, being condescending. I mean, listen, I grew up in the church. If that's the way that you lead your flock, if that is the shepherd that you have chosen to be, your flock is going to be astray in the first storm, and you're going to be known as the worst shepherd in the world because you don't support your flock and you don't watch out for them because those aren't your priorities. You're over here looking at the shiny thing.
Yeah, and I've made the argument for Jesse a couple times because it's hard being up there, the scrutiny that comes along with that.
But voluntarily.
Well, so that's the argument that always comes back up. It's like, well, that's what that job entails. So if you don't like it, you should probably if you can't handle the heat in the kitchen, then get out. So
you ran once, you ran twice. The second time was a commitment. That was you choosing to come back to what happened.
I agree.
So kind of getting back to where we started at. You look at all these patterns and then you go, okay, so if I have a singular event like this development order, I have a singular event like, faulty check signatures, or I have a single event where there was requests for, 501(c)(3)s to be set up so there's no oversight because there's no public records requirements, or I have secondary accounts that you want set up for holding things, but money is going to move in and out of them. Well, who's going to approve that? Because that's not how our charter's set up. Okay, you have these instances that are now documented. Then you have second instances that are documented. Well, a peacock's not going to change its colors. A zebra's not going to change its stripes. If this is how you were taught to run a city by Michael White, this is how you're going to run a city. Now, you might try to clean up your act because, hey, you beat FEMA or you beat the FBI. You beat everybody. There's no one around looking at you anymore. You won.
Yeah.
Now you can run a city. Maybe you try to clean it up a little bit, maybe not, but you're still going to do some of those same things. Whether they're criminal or whether they're just negligent. Is this the direction that the residents really want this city going? Do we not want to know what's happening to tax money? Do we not want to know whether or not, grants are being used properly or effectively doing things? They raised the millage on stormwater. They raised the millage on property taxes. They raised, basically everything they could because they say we don't have money.
Yeah.
Where did it go? You knew this stuff was coming. Now they have the problem of they have to build a $50 million stormwater sewage plant because they've developed so much with these blanket development orders that Vickie's just haven't pushed through that now they're on the verge of not being able to put a single home back in until they can spend $50 million on sewage. So if that happens, what happens to Marina Bay? What happens to everything over near Titus Park? What happens to all the infill that they're trying to do in townhomes? And, you need urban infill like apartments and townhomes because we're getting denser. You need those in certain areas, behind Walmarts, in commercial areas. They're great for it. You can't put those in if we don't have somewhere for all the sewage to go. How did you overlook for 6 years of massive development that you're going to run out? Because I know Lightfoot was there the whole time. Chris Lightfoot, who's their engineer, saying, hey, this is going to be a problem. At what point do you choose to listen? Again, it's negligence.
Yeah.
Now, we can get into criminality of some stuff, but at the core of it, it's still negligence.
I think the biggest thing is that we understand the imperfections of city governments.
Yeah.
And so one of my biggest questions that I normally ask people when they come on, any candidate who ran for office, and this normally catches people off guard, and it's a lengthy one because you have to explain it, which is paint a perfect picture of what a local government looks like.
Okay.
Because I really like, again, I know I hammer on the simple things.
Yeah.
Though Bishop is I consider him a pretty close acquaintance.
Yeah.
And I talk to him quite regularly. And one of the things that we can complain about city governments all day long.
Sure.
We can complain about city municipality, whatever.
But how do you fix it?
I don't think it's so much. So how you're going to fix something is be able to explain what you're looking for.
I have a great way of telling you how to.
So my whole thing is if you can explain how you're going to get a perfect city manager, perfect mayor, and then a perfect commission, and have nobody who's going to submit to sin, I would love to hear that. Because however,
Sure.
I will say, I'm not saying that anything that you're saying, I'm not trying to discredit any of it. But what I'm going to say is like, after the shitstorm that
Yeah.
that the city of Lynn Haven took from the
Yeah.
last mayor and all of that stuff. Yeah, because we could say all day long, I read the book, whatever. But my whole thing is there's way too much there to say that everybody was in, or well, that there were certain people that were innocent. I
Sure.
believe that everybody plays a part in corruption and not even knowing it sometimes.
So let's talk about, let's take the corruption out of it again, and let's just talk about maybe bad decisions.
Well, paint a perfect picture of what Lynn Haven would look like with the proper government.
Okay. Well, let's talk about any small government, right? Because we're just talking about
There you go.
cities.
All right.
So Midwestern town, farms all around it, 20 miles away from everything.
Cow pies.
Yeah, let's call it Liberty City. All right. And not that Liberty City, okay? Not that one.
All right.
So let's call it Liberty City.
Yeah.
So my belief of a small government or any government has three purposes. You need to create community squares where people can congregate, come together as a community, and interact, compromise, and communicate with each other. You need to, as a government, provide the ability for commerce to exist. So roads, telecom, things like that, where businesses and people who want to spend their money can do it, because without it, you don't have an economy. And then the third thing that you need to provide is safety and security from violent crimes. So we're not talking about, Karen doesn't like the way a certain color is, so the HOA is not going to allow purple in their neighborhood anymore. No, we're talking about we shouldn't have human traffickers, violent criminals, yeah, all the stuff, right? Like all the things. You shouldn't have that in a community, so you need a level of safety. Now, again, how willing are you to trade security for liberty? That becomes a fine line with that third one. But from a city perspective, if the city focuses on those three goals, freedom of speech and community of congregation, the ability for individuals to produce commerce and fairly paying for it, and then security like police forces, fire, things like that. If you do those three things, you shouldn't be doing anything else as a community. So, low income housing. If you're not taxing a lot and your stuff's right, low income housing will happen. People will put up a trailer home that's really nice, like they did in Lynn Haven, just south of Mowat, right? It's a nice trailer community for people to live in. If you have streets that are properly paved in a downtown where, people can build with the right zoning and ordinances for them to be able to build a good downtown, and you plot it out and plan it right, like Panama City was, you're going to have a great 100 years later, you're going to have a place to do commerce. If you do all those small things right and only focus on those, not the DEI stuff, not the, oh, woe is me, not the this, that, and the other, not all of that stuff. You just focus on running the infrastructure so that the community can decide what kind of community it wants to be. It's very hard to go wrong, because here's what you install in the modern society, right? For development orders in Bay County, they have a mapping system where you can open up the map and see every single parcel that's under development, whether it's building, whether it's anything else. They have permit programs like Acela down in Hillsborough County, where you can log in and see if your neighbor pulled a roof permit, or if the people building a house next door got their floodplain permitting or things like that. You can look it all up on your own as a responsible citizen doing research. I believe that government budgets in depth should be online. What are you spending monthly?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Things like that. So then, like infrastructure projects. One thing that I was talking to Daniel Ratfield about is you guys have infrastructure projects up, but what about the parks? You guys are doing so much great stuff for the parks. Why can't I go on a map, click on a park, and it tells me projects you guys are working on? I have Isaac Bird Park just up the street. And, I would love to know that there's a, kind of gazebo going in, some, pergola chairs and some other things.
Well, a lot of those things, and if Daniel said that, he knows this just as much as anybody else. That comes down to manpower. That comes down to manpower requirements. That comes down to like that's time.
It used to.
It is
Everything's
time.
automated though now. You can get an AI system that can do half that stuff for you, and computer systems and everything else.
Yeah, well,
There's grants from the states. There's grants from the federal
You're
government
probably
on modernizing.
right,
No,
but-
I'm not probably right. I know for a fact there are.
but what I'm saying is that we could talk about those grants all day long. We could talk about how you can come up with money to be able to do it. But when you look at the real reason behind it, it's kind of like, dude, if you want to know, just call up an official and ask them. They'll tell you. Ty Ferris runs all the Isn't he the Parks and Rec guy? Ty Ferris?
I think Vincent is now.
Yeah. So, dude, I can call him up right now and I can ask him anything I want. And if he doesn't answer the phone, he's going to call me back. He's going to let me know.
Sure.
So the whole thing about I want to be able to have an app, and I'm not making fun of you for that, but my whole thing is being able to go online and go look up something like that. The only thing that I agree with you on this whole thing, this whole topic, is the budget. I think as a tax-paying citizen, you should be able to look at the budget. Everything else, make a freaking phone call or email.
Maybe, but let me ask you this: if let's say Vickie. Well, it's very simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say Vickie gets 10 phone calls a day that each last 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of time taken out of her day for something that
That's what she gets paid for. She gets $160,000 a year.
She does. Okay, let's take it to someone else. Let's say Jan, the city clerk for Panama City, right? She's already building spreadsheets. She's already putting stuff into digital systems. They're already putting, business licenses and development permits and everything into computer systems. Mm-hmm. They're already doing that as a function of their job. Why can't I see that? What's so secret about it? There's nothing. The software systems that they're using have those visual components that they can pay for relatively cheap, like $10,000 a year. They can add on a map and a reporting system and a search system for public use for $10,000 a year. And yet they don't do it. Why? And so that's the questions I ask. Well, why did we need a $400,000 kitchen from the discretionary fund? Because Vickie got $1.4 million in discretionary spending in that city hall. So, I mean, she got her own shower. So did the mayor. $30,000 bathroom in her personal office. So did the mayor. A whole bunch of other stuff on discretionary spending. So if we can spend money on that, why can't we spend money on a system that...
When you say discretionary spending, there's no such thing in government. Shouldn't be.
But in the contract to
build...
No.
I understand what you're saying. But what I'm saying is that's stupid.
It is stupid. It's very stupid. It's a terrible way to run the business. But again, somebody brings you a contract to sign and doesn't mention that that's in the contract, and they only give you a contract 2 days before the commission meeting, and the lawyers tell you everything's up to snuff, and so you sign it because the people that you hired and put in place to give you the proper information didn't provide it to you. And that's where Jamie's at. You asked the questions. Judy Tinder, that's where she at. She asked the questions. Wasn't provided with the information. Again, negligence.
Well, that's the argument. The argument is the fact that you have a city official that asks you for something,
and you're not providing. Yeah,
you give it to him. Period.
Why are you going to badger them or send your, puppet mayor after him to call him a racist and all these other things because he asked for information? You had 8 police officers that quit after the Ricky Ramey situation in December.
So that whole thing about the Colin Kaepernick, what's that guy's name?
Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah. Kaepernick?
Yeah.
Nerd. That whole thing with the whole thing that Jesse brought up, you're saying that was brought up because of him asking questions?
Of course, because you have to. So what was the Democratic playbook for 4 years? You ask a question, I'm going to call you a name. You dig into deep files.
So let's be real about that particular situation.
Yeah.
Dude, 100% Jesse was 100% wrong.
Yeah.
I don't agree with any of it. It is completely absurd that you would do that in a city
Yep.
forum. However, Jesse is human blood, just like everybody else, and he makes mistake of letting people get in your head. Like here's the thing, and I there is one thing from that meeting that I do agree with, and a lot of people are going to get. I'm going to get all the Karens from the Beacon that are going to get all upset about this. But the thing about it is when you talk shit about somebody for long enough, eventually you're going to get that dog that's going to come out and he's going to bite.
Yep.
And so when you look at pages that are in the local area that stood behind Jamie, and whether or not Jamie, and Jamie dismissed himself from them completely.
Yep.
He didn't even want to have anything to do with them when he was running because it was like they were hurting his campaign.
Sure.
And so the whole thing about it is they sat there, they attacked his wife, his kids, everything like that. And I do agree with what he said. He says, why is it, you're allowed, you got freedom of speech. So does the mayor.
To an extent. As a private individual, he has the freedom of speech. As an elected official, his actions
speak for the city.
Not just that. You cannot be seen. It's no different than, let's say, a project manager for a company. You can be held for slander and libelous if you say something about people.
Absolutely.
If you attack somebody or do something else because of your position, you can be held more accountable than that individual from the Beacon or, from some grumpy old man's house coming up and yelling at you. Okay, fine. But
I get the public figure aspect.
But where he goes wrong is when he turns to Jamie in his mayoral comments and says, you need to get your voters on a leash. No, Mayor, you're an at-large position,
Voters
and so
are
is Mayor.
supporters.
It doesn't matter.
Well, the reason why
they're individuals, they are residents, they have the legal right to speak their mind, whether they sound like the kookiest nut jobs in the world. And believe me, there's a guy called the Captain that goes to the Bay County Commission meetings. If you've never watched them, hilariously crazy. Like, love the guy and also don't want to have to get stuck in an elevator with the guy all at the same time. Okay, great. He sometimes, and everyone makes a point once in a while, but I do agree, sometimes there's a lot of conjecture in there. However, our republic is set up that the residents and voter population has the right to hold an elected official accountable.
Absolutely.
And so you're going to take some flack. But what you can't do is look over at your fellow commissioners, because the mayor is a commissioner at the end of the day. He's just the chair of the board, and there's a few other responsibilities. That's the only thing that separates him from being a weak mayor and actually being a commission member. There's so little that separates him in a weak mayor system. So because of that, he looked at another seated commissioner and goes, keep your people in line. No, they're your people too, Mayor. Whether you like it or not, they are still residents, constituents, and citizens of your city.
Yeah.
And so I can agree that adults should have respect for each other no matter what. If you're going to talk about things, let's talk about facts, but let's not say that, someone's wife is a, tequila tramp, or, someone's, husband, drinks too much, whatever. Like, that's personal stuff.
Or getting on a show and saying that Jesse abuses his wife.
Yeah, and unless you have proof of it. And if you have proof of it, then, that's maybe a matter for...
Maybe you should fucking show it.
Yeah, maybe that's where you should go to the, Bay County Police if they'll be willing to do anything and, go that route. Okay. What you can't do is try to publicly put or privately put a commissioner in a corner because you don't like his position on something.
That whole aspect of attacking him on that and being like, get your voters under, or get your supporters under. Yeah,
whatever.
I get that. What I was referring to though is the fact that, I don't stand behind the actions of it. You're the mayor. You're supposed to be professional at all times.
Yeah.
But he does have the freedom of speech. He can do it if he wants to. And he can.
And listen,
he did.
If he wanted to say that after the commission meeting, go up, to the news organization as
He can say it during the meeting. What's to say that he can't? What's in the charter that says it? What's in the Florida State statute? He can say whatever he wants. Now, that the actions for
have
every
consequences.
Action, that's the reason why I'm saying he can do whatever the hell he wants to do.
Well, and now maybe. But then you get into the realm of misfeasance of, is it...
Well, that's the reason why you got a recall.
Is it proper or...
My whole thing about it is like, I mean, if this dude wanted to sit there and he wants to call out somebody and he wanted to do what he did to Jamie was 100% wrong.
Yeah.
All right?
But there's nothing illegal about the
There's nothing illegal.
No.
Yeah. So,
but it's going to get you recalled.
But it's going to get you recalled, or you're not going to get fucking elected again.
Yeah.
So like I agree, what he did was wrong, and you gotta eat the consequences that come along with it. But to sit there and say that he can't do it, he can do it all he wants to.
Sure.
But it's going to come with some consequences, and I don't think the popularity of the mayor has definitely dropped because of that, and I don't ever foresee it coming back up.
No.
But I also don't think that, you know, I don't know, like with the whole recall situation, should he be recalled for something like that? I don't think that there's a big enough voice to be able to make it happen.
Maybe I've talked to a lot of people that are pissed. And so this is the funny
And
thing.
I'm sure you have.
Here's the funny
but-
thing about voting, right? More people will turn out when they're pissed than they will. Because here's the thing.
No, you're 100% right.
It is very easy to make,
So-
3,000-4,000 people say, no, I hate you. It's hard to get 1,000 people to say, I like your replacement. I guarantee we are going to surpass the 1,500 petitions. I don't think we're going to have a problem. I think we're going to sail past it. What's going to be interesting is who's chosen as his replacement. Because, the system's going to find who they want as their replacement.
Mm-hmm.
The people have to find theirs.
Yeah.
And so, as a responsible resident, as a member of this republic, as a born American, if you love this country, you need to start looking at your local cities, especially Lynn Haven, and go, what are they doing? And who can I elect to guarantee that it won't happen again? I don't care if you like the person or not. How good are they going to be at doing their job to fix the corruption, audit the budget, and get us back on track? It's not Jesse Nelson. In fact, Jesse Nelson is such good friends with Vickie that, look at any of the other commissions. Just look at what they look like on the board, right? You have all of the boards sitting, the mayor, the chair, whatever commission it is, in the middle, and then the commissioners around it. And then the lawyer and the city managers usually sit off to the side. Lynn Haven is the only one that sits Vickie right dead in the middle. That's kind of weird, in my opinion. You'll see Vickie it's interesting because she has a lot of nonverbal cues. So if you watch enough of Vickie's videos, you'll see where she gives people dirty eyes or where she kind of taps on something or nods her head a certain way. And people know, I need to stop talking or I need to start doing this. And, and so there's a manipulation to the board because of that, because she's sitting right next to the mayor. And then when the mayor doesn't have a question, she just looks right over at her and, she'll kind of answer it for him. But dude, that's your job.
Yeah.
You get paid $32,000 a year to be the mayor. You should know the ordinances. You should know everything about the city after 4 years, and you don't. And so that's where the gross negligence comes in.
Yeah. So displacing the like the hearsay on moving money around, right?
Sure.
So let's get off of that. What's wrong with the budget other than that?
So there's never been what I would call full audit done on the budget. Not just.
Why do you think that is?
Well, they're expensive and they're hard to do. And so you have a city manager in
So
Vickie.
when was the last time it was audited?
Well, they do audits every year, but basically that is, does this payer item match up with this check and do you have the reconciliation for it? It's not looking for, was this supposed to be allocated in here and moved without a vote? It's not looking for, what was the email trail on the approvals for X, Y, and Z? It's not looking
Who
at
do you think should hold that accountable though? It should
The
be
clerk.
a clerk. Yeah.
the clerk.
Okay.
That's what Jan does at Panama City. She's great at it. That is, well,
There's been a lot of people that have sat in that seat from Panama City.
Sure.
But anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
sure. Do you like you probably love your mom, but do you like her when she's telling you that you didn't do your chores and you're not going to get to go out inside and play? No.
No, I agree with the city clerk. I think that there should be a city clerk for checks and balances. I don't believe that anybody should be able to just go out and do whatever the hell they want to do.
No. When you're getting FEMA money, what happens? FEMA audits it, the state audits it, and then you get your money.
Yeah.
There's 2 checks and balances in that system. Why wouldn't we have it at local government?
Yeah, the fact that Lynn Haven, what was the argument for that? They didn't want it because, did we already talk about this?
No, we haven't talked about it yet. Yeah, no.
I think we talked about it in the green room.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, sorry, my bad. Yeah, so what was the argument behind?
Yeah. Well,
I'm like, we talked about so much. What was the reasoning behind not having a city clerk?
So there's a video that we put out, and we're going to be putting out a bunch of videos, but it's on our Facebook. You can go on facebook.com/recall Mayor Nelson. Super simple. I don't like to complicate things. His argument, number one, was that they can't currently keep control of Vickie Gaynor. So if the commission doesn't believe that they're in charge of Vickie Gaynor right now, then how is hiring another person going to be effective if they can't control the city manager?
So let's go one by one.
Yeah.
All right. So you just explained that one. So the argument is that a city clerk isn't going to be able to manage her.
No, the argument is that the commission won't be able to give her the proper, SOP, if you will, on what they want to see for her to be or him to be effective in that role, because they haven't been able to give the proper
All right, that one's
SOP.
bullshit. Go to number 2.
Yeah. Well, no, it's important because
no, I think it's a stupid argument.
for him it is.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But,
it's a dumbass
but
argument.
on the argument side of this, if you're telling us that you currently can't control Vickie Gaynor,
That's my point.
Yeah. Then you've said all you need to say.
Yeah.
Okay, number 2. His second argument was city clerks steal money. If you do enough, he brought up
City managers steal money.
Michael White, the
That's
city
what I'm
manager,
saying.
steals money.
So that's a dumb argument.
So
too.
here's my favorite.
That's stupid.
If you listen to the whole thing, he brought up, this town from South Florida or this town from Alabama. He brought up statistics from Nebraska.
Yeah, let's talk about here. We've already seen it here. I don't need to know what the hell they did in Nebraska.
Michael White hired, trained, and basically coached Vickie Gaynor into how to be a city manager. She didn't find the $5 million that he helped ECS steal from the city. And your argument is that city clerks steal money. Well,
So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
We'll come back to the third reason. See as how the first two were just stupid as fuck. But let's talk about that real quick. So was it Vickie Gaynor's job at the time? So she was a contract manager at the time, so she should have caught that $5 million.
Sure. So a contracts manager, essentially what they do is they oversee what's called an RFP, so like a request for proposal or a request for quote. They set the bidding criteria, right? So the bidding criteria is like if you want to pave a road, you need to have at least, 3 pavers, 2 excavators, and 50 people that you can provide to be able to do this job. So that's what they say when they set up the, the bidding requirements.
Would a city clerk have caught it?
I think so. And we can go into why.
I mean, we could play hypotheticals all we want, but that's my point. It's like, the more, and so especially, and Kendall understands this too, coming from military background, the more eyes and hands that you have on something, the less that you have to worry about negligence.
Sure.
The less you have to worry about dumbass mistakes happening.
So here's the great thing about a city clerk is the city manager can't bully a city clerk because a city clerk doesn't answer to the city manager.
Yep.
But a deputy city clerk that answers to a city manager clerk position, like Vickie to Michael White, or a couple other people to Vickie Gaynor, if they're in that position, then they have the ability to say, hold on, this doesn't look right. So let's say that you have a clerk and 3 people under them. One of them is only in charge of finance records. Their job is to go through all the finance records and go, yes, A matches B. However, was A supposed to go to B? Was B even in the budget? Does this make sense according to what was outlaid by the commission? Then you have someone, in let's say payroll, making sure, looking over checks that are going out and things like that. Well, there's a, something from the former finance director in the whistleblower accounts that says that on 2 different accounts, the bank flagged checks that possibly Vickie Gaynor signed illegally.
Yeah.
For somebody else, because I haven't seen the visual checks, so we can't go and run AI on it to check the signatures yet, but we have public records requested that information. So we can run it through an AI. We have a great AI software that can look at signatures almost as good as the FBI can and say, this curl on your T or the way that you write your S's or sign this is emblematic of your signature and not the mayor's. Okay, so we could go through from 2018 to 2024 and find out just how many checks were pulled back and how many checks look like they were signed by another person, and then go and find signatures where they signed their name or something else for every employee in the city and find out whose signatures matches and what percentages they match to it. So we can go and find all this information once we have the data. But getting back to the more...
When are you supposed to get that?
This is going to take her months to go through what we're requesting because she doesn't have a city clerk or everything. And we're going to talk about how many people are quitting. There's 5 directors leaving the city.
Let's go to the number 3 real quick.
All right.
Because I was enjoying that one.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of this is the dumbest thing.
Yeah. So city clerks can steal money. Okay. Well, city managers can't too.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
The third argument I believe that he made was that what's it? Oh, a second person isn't going to provide any extra checks and balances. Okay. You know what I love? So FBI agents, there's a little thing about FBI agents. Anytime that they go and investigate somebody, they always take two people. Do you know why?
Battle buddy system, accountability.
Well, yeah. But you always have someone to agree with the fact that someone seems suspicious. You always have someone to corroborate what you overheard somebody say. You always have someone to back you up or to go, whoa, 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 man. Hey, this isn't the best action we should be taking right now. Maybe we need to take a step back. You know, that's a good battle buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, don't stick your head out there. Are you stupid? Like, you know.
Don't bash the terrorist's head in with your freaking M4 because he made you feel squirrely.
Yeah, I get that a 12-year-old just shot at us, but like, you know, we kind of need. So, anyways, there's a lot of things that, but that's what the checks and balances is it's a second person going, explain this to me. So if you have a city manager alone that is also the city clerk taking documents to the commission, who's saying whether or not she properly vetted that document and that the document's accurate? The city employees?
Yeah, so who overlooks?
Yeah.
Who overlooks you?
So
who looks at your stuff before it goes out? Because it sounds like, the argument of not having a city clerk for an extra pair of eyes to look over a city manager, you're putting somebody in a position where they're God, where nobody has to look over what they do.
Well, and so Vickie was only making about 115 to 120,000 when she was the interim city manager until they hired her on fully, right?
Yeah.
She's now making 166,000 because they say that, you know, because she took on the role of a city clerk, that she deserves more money, and the mayor argued for 185,000. Wow.
So the money aspect, you know, people lose me on that one, and I'll tell you why. How big of a budget does Vickie manage?
Sure.
So like, my whole thing is, man, dude, this rhetoric that goes on about salaries is just so stupid.
And
I have PMs, you know, I had a PM for a while that handled a $350 million budget, which is bigger than like Bay
Most
County.
cities, yeah.
Yeah, well, the county.
Yeah.
And so you're talking about that, and he makes over
money.
$200,000.
But he should.
Yeah,
his profit margin's probably like,
the headache, and it goes back into what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Like, I will tell you this: when I had Vickie on, the entire time she was on, her phone went off
Oh, mine does too. I had to mute it.
Fucking stop. And so like being the city manager, I mean, how many citizens are there of Lynn Haven?
22,000 adults and children.
We were talking about earlier, if you were talking about 15-minute phone calls here and there, which I doubt that she stays on the phone with somebody for 15 minutes.
No, well, sometimes yes,
sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Yeah.
And then she does that on top of her normal job.
Sure.
You know, of everything that goes that falls in line with being a city manager. So if anybody's trying to argue a salary, you can literally go fuck yourself, because that's a lot. I mean, she doesn't. If you ask me, it's not enough money.
Well, they also get a lot.
I don't think that it is.
They get a lot of good benefits, and so you got to
They
remember
get a
about
lot of good benefits,
and,
but I got to get ear fucked by somebody for fucking hours a day. You know, complaining about. But it is part of the job. But don't complain about the salary.
You're going to tell me that those same people aren't at a customer service booth at freaking Target every Saturday?
That's the career that they chose.
And so is Vickie's.
Yeah, she chose that career, and it comes with a salary. It comes with a decent salary.
And I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
So let's get away from what she's paid, but really what she was paid for. The argument that Jesse Nelson made is because she serves two roles, she deserves the raise. That was his argument, not mine. I'm not talking about the validity of whether or not she should be paid that much. I'm talking about the argument that was made because there's no clerk. She gets paid, you know, she should be paid $185,000.
So hire a new clerk.
Yes.
No, I agree with you on that.
But look at the numbers. If she started at 120 and he was trying to argue for 185,
if you have somebody that is arguing not having a second person, like,
why give him a raise then?
Yeah, I mean, you chose that fate for that
route.
person.
Yeah.
No,
so you could have paid a city manager $65,000 or a city clerk $65,000 a year, which is good starting for Lynn Haven with benefits. Start them at that. They work up to maybe 82 to like 88,000 on the high end once they've been there long enough. That's a good salary for a small city clerk. Obviously, it was in your budget because Vickie started at 115, 120, and you were arguing for 185. So let's say she started at 115.
Oh, as the assistant.
No, she was acting city manager at this point.
She was acting. Really?
Yeah, that's
a big jump.
28. Yeah, it is 70,000. Or he was asking for 70,000. So my argument is, couldn't you have taken that 70,000 and hired a clerk?
That would have been the smart route.
And now you're getting 80 hours worth of work a week instead of 40. So there's my argument.
You chose her fate for her.
Yes, and pushed it on everybody.
Yeah, that's where. Okay, you got me on
Misfeasance. Misfeasance.
Well, I don't know if that's misfeasance.
Is it the best route for your city, or are you trying?
I mean, it's opinion based. I mean, that is opinion,
and that's what the voters get to choose.
I agree with you, but it's opinion based.
Sure, but that's what the voters get to choose.
Yeah, no, you're right, 100%.
Was it the best choice for the city, or would having 80 hours worth of work be better than 40 hours worth of work for the same amount of money?
Yeah, I agree with you. They should have just hired a.
So now we could have taken off.
And she could have still got a raise.
She could have. You could have gone to 130.
Yeah. Still bump it and get yourself a second person in there for checks and balances.
I'm fine with the work that you're doing. A good city manager salary for Lynn Haven right now with compensation would probably, because she also gets a $750 a month gas stipend, vehicle stipend, on top of her pay. $750 a month.
Hey, Kendall, look this up. Look up the average salary of a city manager in the state of Florida and their vehicle allowances.
Yeah,
I just want to know what it is.
It's probably going to be like 150, 160. And so what I'm saying is 140 would have been very fair.
Yeah, but how many of those city managers have a clerk?
About 40% of cities, I believe, according to the League of Cities, have clerks in their town. I mean, I don't understand. And look, you got me on this. And the reason why, and I already, when I talked to Jamie about this, I 100% agree. I just don't understand why you don't want somebody there to make sure that's just a second, because like especially in the world that I live in defense contracting. Yeah. So like I write manuals for a living, and God
that would
bless
be
your heart,
dude. It's it's whatever. But the whole thing about it is like there's like 3 or 4 people that take a look at my work before it gets published, and
not because you can't do your job. But because you have checks and balances. Yeah.
What's up, Kendall?
So she's doing pretty good. And let's say that that's pre-inflation, right? Let's say that that's 2020, 2021 numbers. So let's take 105. Let's add a 20% increase to it.
Hey, Kendall, you're not coming through on our earphones. I hope it's being recorded. I just for letting you know. Okay. Okay. So 105,000. Yeah. Okay. Woo.
So now we're making 166 as a city manager clerk. Again, now you could have reappropriated that money properly and hired a clerk and hired a city manager.
Yeah.
But here's the great thing. And
2 people having 2 eyes on stuff.
Not just that. If you have a good city clerk, here's what's going to happen. When you go to do your budget audits or when you go to do other things, you can say, I had, let's make it easy. I had 5 roadway contracts this year for a total of $1 million. Each one of them $200,000. 4 of them used their entire budget, and we had to go over on one of them, and do a change order by like $50,000. But the last one only cost us $130,000. So we net have left over, like $30,000, $40,000? Now that's going to sit in a fund until it's either used or found. And so when Doge talks about like waste, fraud, and abuse, the waste is just stuff sitting in accounts or things that weren't used, that weren't reallocated into the budget the next year or anything else like that. What an audit's going to do is go, hey, did you know that you didn't spend $30,000 over here? Where do you want to use it now? So your audits can actually be great things for the city because you go and reconcile, 10,000 here, 2,000 there, $500 here. And all of a sudden you made up a new police officer's salary. You can afford to do the maintenance on the fire trucks now. You can plant new trees at the park. because you found the money in an audit. That's what clerks can do for you if you set up the system right. Third-party auditors can do the same thing, and Sam made that point that you can hire a third-party auditor and go that route. Okay, great. James Finch, and I know James Finch is suing the city, but James Finch offered out of his own money to put it in an escrow account and basically say, you have an unlimited fund to go do an audit, an in-depth forensic financial audits.
Yeah, but it's so counterintuitive. Like, here, take money while I sue you. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Sorry, bro.
Why?
I'm gonna freaking sue the city, but yet I also want to give you money at the same time.
No, I want to spend money on auditing the city so that the city and the residents know where their tax money was spent.
So, is it he wants to pay for an audit to help the citizens know where money was spent?
Sure. Let's ask a question. If you were supposed to spend $1 million on stormwater and they were going to go do a project in front of your house, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they go and do this project, it kind of looks a little haphazard, you know, it could have been swaled a little better. The culverts could have been a little better. Like, why wasn't it up to snuff? Well, because they only spent $800,000 on it. Where'd the other 200 go? Oh, well, we needed to finish up a sidewalk in front of Vickie Gaynor's house. So we spent the other 200 there because we changed up the budget a little bit, but same contractor. So it's okay. How are you going to find that in an audit unless Vickie tells you that she did it?
Yeah, like I said, hypotheticals.
Hypotheticals.
I mean, but the thing about it is, you know, that's the reason why, you know, James Finch, you know, you brought him up. I mean, dude has done over $100 million with the city
Sure.
over the years.
And with every city and with,
I care about the city, but I'm going to sue the city, which costs taxpayers dollars. So the argument on he cares about the taxpayer, dude, fuck that noise.
Let me
I
ask-
do not believe
Let me
that
ask
at
you
all.
this. If the only way to prove to the commission that she has committed crimes like bid rigging with Chris Forehand, right? The only way to prove that, because you don't want to listen to it through evidence submitted through public commentary, you don't want to admit it after an FBI investigation, you don't want to admit it through anything else. So if I have to sue you in a court of law to show you the evidence that your city manager
If you care about the
committed a
if
crime.
you care about the taxpayer, you'd come out and say that you pay for the audit before you come out and say that you're going to sue. You come out with a lawsuit after the city doesn't want to do the audit and prove to the taxpayer. Until then, it just looks like.
Okay.
I mean,
So
let me
ask you this.
let's turn our let's be honest. I mean, if you're going to sit there, if I sit there and I say I care about the taxpayers of the city,
Sure.
okay, then and I want to prove these people are not putting money where it needs to go. The steps that were taken weren't that. The steps that were taken were I'm going to sue the city and then I'm going to go and try to help them afterwards. You think the city is going to freaking listen to you? You're suing. You are suing. So he's not suing the city. So let's make that very clear. He's suing the taxpayer. He's suing me.
Mm-hmm. Well, if he could, he'd sue Vickie Gaynor, but he can't.
Okay,
because she's
that
legally
sounds
protected.
better. No, that sounds better.
She's legally
Like,
protected.
I mean,
So remember we talked about the city lawyer, right? The city lawyer, their entire purpose is to mitigate risk. Who do they answer to? By and large, they're supposed to answer to the commission, but they are managed by the city manager. So if the only way to get to the city manager is to sue the city to prove in court that she committed, whatever he says that she committed.
or if he cared, like you said,
Well,
he could have proved it with this is my point on this, and I'll bring it back around. If you're going to sit there and you're going to say, I'll pay for an audit, right? Come out with that and say, let me pay for an audit because I don't think you guys are doing what you need to do with funds. And then you could even label it in a way where you're looking at Jesse Nelson, you're looking at Vickie Gaynor, and you're like, hey, I'm protecting you guys. Let's go ahead and let's run an audit on the city and make sure that they're putting money where they're supposed to, okay? If they say no, then sue the city because you think that corruption is there. But that's not the steps that were taken.
What if you have testimony from Chris Forehand that said that you did bid rig for Vickie Gaynor on multiple occasions and you know that happened? And you tell everybody and they say, wait, weren't you indicted on like 60 something counts of fraud? Yeah, but I was found not guilty. Well, how many times in the community does someone have to say I was found not guilty by multiple juries before someone's willing to say, maybe you're not actually the mobster, maybe it was the government that started the whole investigation on you in the first place. Let's talk about the fact. So do you know what a FBI 302 is?
Explain it to me.
So an
Explain it to me like I'm an eighth grade. There you go.
All right, so there's this form. So a FEMA 302, or no, I'm sorry, not a FEMA 302, an FBI 302, essentially as it's been described by legal scholars to me, is a way of submitting a necessity for a character review of an individual that you believe may be up to no good. It's a way of kind of submitting when there's investigations going on. It's kind of a way of submitting a request to look into someone.
Yeah.
So there's been plenty of accounts of which I've seen some of these publicly, given to me after everything became public, where certain individuals of the public, maybe certain people that work at the Beacon or other places like that were not fans of Vickie and, stuff like that, that had investigations started on them by the administration of Vickie and Ricky with the sole purpose of just screwing with them. Go ask Jerry Parker about it.
Explain that.
Well, if you have if you're going, hey, there's $5 million that we think that's being stolen, or there's money over here that you're moving around and stuff like that, and they start posting that in the Beacon, and then 2 months later you get a knock on your door by an FBI agent, well, 2 of them, because they always come in pairs, battle buddies, and they say, hey, we've had a report from a government official that you might not be up to any good. We need to interview you.
And who is this with?
Jerry Parker will tell you the account. She runs the Bay County Beacon.
The FBI came to her door because of her Facebook page?
Because somebody at the city submitted a 302 on her. And she has the copy of it. She'll give it to you.
Yeah, so they came and they asked her what she was talking about, and she was able to show it to him?
No.
I'm trying to...
No, so a 302 is basically submitted on a person of interest that may or may not have committed a crime.
They were saying Jerry Parker committed a crime?
Yeah, they said it on multiple residents of the community. There are tons of 302s that had nothing to do with anybody involved in the corruption.
Well, if you went on your page and you started saying that there was a bunch of money that was missing and you don't have proof of that's a crime. Yeah, I would understand that.
Okay.
Was she able to prove it?
You can ask her about it. She'll love to talk to you about it.
Probably not. I don't talk to her. She just talked. Actually, so we go to the same church, and she just made some post like a couple of days ago about how like she wasn't going to be friendly with me in church and all this. And I'm like, all because of politics. But here's my thing on that. Yeah, that goes back to what we were saying earlier. Things that you say and you put online have consequences.
Sure.
So,
but to what?
And if you don't have proof of what you're saying, that's slander.
Sure.
So it would not surprise me if she got off a little, hey, I'm here talking to you because you're an elderly lady and you just put this out online, but like this right here, unless you have proof, you should probably shut up.
So is that a responsibility for the federal government to investigate? Because they only investigate federal crimes. So what did Jerry do that was a federal crime that they should have been investigating her for?
If you're saying that the funds, what funds was she talking about when she talks about $5 million? Was it federal funds that came in?
Yeah.
Well, then, yeah, that's a crime. That's a federal crime.
Saying that she believes that money was
Wait,
spent
saying
improperly.
that she believes or saying that it was?
We would have to go back.
Yeah,
and look.
that's my thing. So there's a difference between the two. Bernie Thompson's very, very good at how he words things.
Oh, yeah.
Because he says things all the time where it seems, it appears to be, because he knows just as much as anybody else. When you have one of these and you start saying you are corrupt,
Mm-hmm.
the freedom of speech kind of goes out the window because you're putting slander on somebody.
Absolutely.
So,
if you can't prove it.
Like if I sit here and I say you are a pedophile.
Sure.
That right there, dude, I'll sue the shit out of you.
Mm-hmm.
I got kids, I got a wife, I'm freaking go to church. I mean, you're sitting there putting stuff out in the community that's 100% wrong.
Yep.
So
and you deserve to be held accountable
and
for
you
it.
deserve to be held accountable for it.
Civilly.
Well, no. If you're talking about I believe. Hey, Kendall, look that up real quick. If you were talking about
Libelous and slander is civil. It is not a criminal
if
charge.
you're talking about federal funds that came into a city, now And you
But she's
were-
a journalist. It does.
Yeah, she's a journalist.
Okay, so I'm sorry. No.
Yeah.
But if we're going to say that CNN and MSNBC are journalists nowadays,
Okay,
then
yeah,
we're going to say that.
Okay, you know what? Yeah, she's a journalist. So
I mean, you're a journalist if we really want to go
I'm
there.
not a journalist. I talk.
I mean,
people keep saying that. They keep saying,
don't the 24-hour news agencies all just talk too? I mean, let's be real.
That shit is fun. You know, people have been saying that too. They're like, "Oh, Ron Q, local journalist." I'm like, I'm not a freaking journalist, dude. I wear normally. You caught me on a work day. Normally, I wear a t-shirt and a baseball cap, and I just talk to people, and then I sit here and I talk shit.
Yeah.
Like, so it is not. It's not journalism. It's far from it. It's. Yeah, man, dude, it's just letting you talk. I got opinions.
Sure.
And dude, this has been awesome so far. I'm like, because I agree with a lot of what you have to say.
Yeah.
But my whole thing is, even if you're talking about disbursements of federal funds, because I just think like if you went out and you were like,
I'm not a lawyer, but
if you start talking about like FEMA money, right? I mean, and you just start saying like they are doing this with their money and stuff like that. I could see how it'd be civil, but like if you got the FBI knocking on your door asking you questions, the FBI can come and knock on your door and ask you questions any day long. But she didn't get charged with anything.
No, it was all dropped. No, there wasn't even
Well,
charges brought against her.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
There was no
if there was
charges
no
brought.
charges, what was wrong with them asking her?
Why were they sent there in the first place?
Because they're asking, hey, you're saying that there's $5 million.
It didn't organically come about in some sort of investigation that they were pulling up. It's not like, let's say, Michael White, where they talked to Chris Forehand, and then he's like, well, I kind of did this stuff. And so all of a sudden now they've got, 2 construction companies and a city manager. It didn't come organically about that way. Somebody from the city physically had to fill out a form and say this person should be investigated. Yeah, and I think a lot of that,
And
too.
I mean, there's a gray line
Sure.
with a lot of that stuff. I understand. But when you start talking about federal funds and stuff like that, and you put that out on Facebook,
Yeah.
but again, and listen, I've been kicked off the Beacon. He's been kicked. Like everybody, they don't like it when there's people on there that criticize what they do.
Sure.
Which I understand that, but like, I mean, that's just part of the
And
nature
I
of
give
this.
Jerry Parker's example because it is publicly known. There are others that were done that haven't come out yet that weren't her.
Yeah, but let's go back to it for a second. Like when you put things out online that is like you don't have 100% proof of what you're saying.
Yes.
Like there's repercussions, and like that one, it's a criminal one because you're saying it's like you're saying that there's federal funds and if you know their style of journalism, it's never. It appears to be, it seems to be, this is who this person is. This is where this money goes. So that's why she had a FBI guy that knocked on her door and went, hey, maybe you know something that I don't know. So please educate me on this. And she probably wasn't able to. And yeah, they probably told her, hey, what you put out online, it affects other people and it affects city governments and things like that.
And that is a fair statement to make, especially when law enforcement's doing investigations, right? The more that you bias or contaminate a investigative pool or the people they're going to be talking to, same thing with a jury, right? The reason that you don't let juries go out and listen to the news organizations on a very public, trial or case or something like that is they're going to get biased by whatever belief system that they have and whoever they listen to as radios. So I get that. Again.
But I'm going to go back to what we were talking about in the green room on that. Because when I listened to the Kash Patel Joe Rogan podcast, when he was talking about, like, I think it was like 87%, it's in the 80s, 80% of FBI agents, don't quote me, because I'm talking about federal agents now, Now I just found out that it could be a crime. 80, close to 80% of the agents are in Washington, D.C. And then they're
Or
dispersed.
stationed out of.
Yeah. And then they're dispersed out into areas where they need to go. And so that was one of the things we talked about earlier, which was like, if you're sending FBI agents from Washington down here, they're not going to have all the ins and outs on how things work.
No,
But you were talking about the tour guide.
Yeah,
And I thought that was a good
and it's a great
example.
analogy, right? Like you go to Paris, you want to see the sights, or you go to New York City and you want to see the sights. You either have a friend that lives there, that's lived there for years and is going to show you the town, or you go and get a tour guide because you want to see the best spots. You want to eat the best pasta in Italy. You want to go and have the best croissant in France and stuff like that. Well, who's going to know? The locals are. So when you have an investigator come in, it is very easy to have investigative bias based on who you assume to be upstanding citizens working in a government. Again, Michael White was the city manager when the FBI first came in. Had they listened to Michael White, who knows how that would have turned out? Had they listened to, believed GAC's contractors that they didn't do anything wrong or something like that, or ECS, hey, we didn't do anything wrong. We had a contract.
I don't understand, like when all that went down, I mean, I don't understand how people think that you're going to get away with it.
So
I know that sounds stupid, but like it's really
euphoria.
It's really funny to me because I'm like, I've had opportunities in my career and abroad,
Sure,
where I could have done something
immoral,
immoral, reckless, whatever, and it was like one of the things, the reason, and like we could talk about a moral compass all you want, whatever. Go back to church, go talk about something else, but. One of the reasons why I haven't done like a lot of things is because like I know I'm not going to get away with it.
Yeah,
Like it's impossible to get away with this. Somebody's going to know about it.
but
That's one of those things. Like you didn't think that anybody. First of all, there's only one person that can keep a secret, dumbass.
yeah,
It's gonna come out.
Yeah.
Like when you can't tell a secret to one person. Like that's the reason why if I say something to somebody, like I just had dinner last night with Brandon Henderson.
okay.
It's a guy from the Cove. He's the guy that came out with the post on me that put the text message out there. Sat down with a great guy. And there was a couple of conversations that we had where I knew in my mind, and I was like, well, I'm going to tell you something. It's a secret. Don't let this leave this room. Even in the back of my head, when I say this doesn't leave this room, it's already in the back of my head that it's going to leave that room.
50% of the time.
It came out of my mouth.
Yep.
And so now, you're talking about small scale stuff. You're talking about fucking millions of dollars.
Yeah.
You didn't think you thought you were going to get away with it. You really thought that was going to happen. Oh, you're an idiot.
Well, and what's sad is look at all the roadway contracts and the rebuilding of homes and everything that goes on after a storm. There's so many ways to make money. Why are you going to be stupid?
Yeah.
So do you even know about the ECS contract, like how they were actually able to accomplish that?
No.
So the contract that they had was just like a general service maintenance contract. They had line items for, this person for an hour's worth of work is 35, this is 50. It's a normal labor contract, right? So they had a service contract already.
Yeah.
They were told, hey, through whatever means it came to be, they started invoicing for I forget how many people it is. It's like 20 people or something like that at 35 an hour daily, plus 2 managers and everything else like that. And just submitting weekly invoices for like 200,000 a pop. And they're just writing the checks and sending them out. So, and this is actually how it happened. I mean, there's daily invoices. There were 9 checks that went out for a total of $4.9 million. 9 checks over a course of 5 months? How did you not notice that weekly $200,000 invoices were coming in on as a contracts manager or a deputy city clerk and not go, hey, let me read their contract and make sure that we're...
So that's an abnormal amount of money that goes out.
For a local contractor, I mean, don't get me wrong.
Well, yeah.
Big contractors, I mean, you're talking about, when you come in and talk about debris or you talk about rebuilding and stuff like that, obviously there's big firms that do this, and that is a totally different playing level because when you're talking about bringing in like 1 million cubic yards of debris, that's an entire landfill.
Yeah.
Whole different playing scale. When you're talking about a local company coming in and charging $5 million in 5 months, and you don't have a single contract, purchase order, or task order attached to it, and you paid all the checks? That's why you need a city clerk. Like, is there any better argument? Is there any better argument?
Not, and you've beat me into that. I mean, so did Jamie. I mean, I agree with both of you guys. If you're not for a city clerk, that tells me there's probably
Wait,
hold on. It appears
to be weird.
It seems.
Yeah.
Like there might be something going on behind the scenes that you don't want anybody else to know about.
Maybe you're just bad at your job and you know it. And if an audit's done, they'll find out that you're not as good at your job as you are, and you just need the job.
So you think that there's misappropriation of funds?
I think that there has been terrible accounting and use of contracts and use of money for purposes.
But it's been negligence, but not purposely done. Well, I mean, that's the question.
Again, when you only have 60% of a story, and so you have to go out and get the facts to represent the last 40.
Yep.
I can say that there's a timeline arc where, having done what I've done, been where I've been, seen what I've seen for 40 years of my life.
Yeah. But you're waiting for a 100% to come out before
I want 99.
Well, you're waiting for at least 99% before you actually start the recall process.
No. There's enough to go through with the recall process. We're talking
Without
about
that.
Yeah, we're talking about Vickie Gaynor versus Jesse. Jesse, he's 100% in the bag. Like, that man is not a leader. He's not a good mayor. He doesn't ask pertinent questions. He takes everything that Vickie says at face value and goes, "Well, Vickie said it." If you don't question, you're not doing your job as a commissioner. I said that the first time I spoke in front of the commission.
That's one of the things that I've really had a hard time watching the meetings. There was a time where those dudes didn't even get up there and speak at all to one another. And it's like, oh, we had a pre-commission meeting and we discussed this. So I think that.
So you formed your opinion before the people that you represent had a chance to talk to you, is what you just told me.
Yeah.
You went in there with bias because you already knew what your vote was. So I and 50 other people could talk and try to change your mind, and you've already made up your opinion. So did you know when Andrew Jackson, or I think it was Jefferson, one of them, I believe the president and the vice president challenged each other to a duel, like, while they're elected.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was freaking great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't we bring that back? Yeah.
Man, dude.
Let's put on some boxing gloves.
What are you talking about? I'm down with freaking hanging people from the courthouse lawn.
Oh, I mean,
What? Why? How many pedophiles do you think you'd have if you castrated somebody in front of the freaking courthouse?
if they went through the legal process and you proved
Yes,
without a
yes,
reasonable
that's what I'm saying. No.
Okay.
I'm not saying.
Okay.
I'm saying.
I'm not lynch mobbing here. Like, no.
I'm not saying, hey, you murdered somebody, and we're not putting you on death row for like 20 freaking years in these appeals process.
No.
You were found guilty, and beyond a shadow of a doubt.
There's video of you doing it.
Yeah, there's video of you doing it. We're hanging you out there.
Better yet, I think if, and this is a personal opinion, and I might get some people pissed off about it, but I believe that, like, if there's video of you doing a, crime against my child, or there is video of you, committing a murder or something along those lines of egregious mistakes, hand a bat and a gun to a family member and let them take care of the problem. After you're found guilty, let's solve the problem real quick.
It's not really putting it in the government's hands, but I get what you're saying. If they want to go through it, the state will take care of it.
Listen, I'm a conundrum because I believe that both the death penalty should exist and it shouldn't. I believe that the government can get it wrong and you can commit someone to death.
That's the reason why I was saying, like, if you're caught on video and you freaking had something to do with my child, yeah, castrate that dude in public. But the thing is, it's to make an example. There's a reason why the Wild West was wild and all that kind of stuff, because, I mean, that's how business was done, dude. Dude, they were hanging dudes for stealing horses.
Listen, if Lynn Haven wants to install like a boxing ring that just comes out of the ceiling and Jesse and Jamie can get together and just go boxing, we'll fill that place. Like, we'll pay-per-view it. Every commission meeting is going to be watched by the entire city after that point.
I like the duel aspect, because then it would have been like, hey, just meet me out there in a second, and they're going to bring the muskets out.
But what it was a way for humans to hold other humans accountable
Yeah.
one-to-one. You didn't have to have this whole big system. I could say, you have caused me harm,
Yeah.
and I want to hold you accountable. You want to talk about my wife? We're going to have problems.
Yeah.
You want to call me a liar,
Man,
or you
people
want to
get
call me
away-
this, that, and the other?
But man, that goes back into these journalists. You know, when you sit there and you talk about people's families and stuff like that, I mean, that right there, I mean, I get the freedom of speech, and you're right. Nothing that you did was illegal.
But is it worse to be a journalist and say it, or is it worse to be a mayor and say it?
What do you mean?
As a positional person in the community, both a journalist has a certain level of position within the community, and so does the mayor. Who do you think is more allowed to say those types of comments? Who
A
has
journalist?
why?
A mayor can't get away with it.
I'm not saying get away. Who has the moral responsibility to be more of an upstanding citizens based on the republic that we have? Should a mayor set a better example, or should a journalist have better integrity?
I think they both should have equal. Like, if you're gonna sit there, that's the reason why, like, I do this, man. Like, you're not the only person I'm having on about this. I'm gonna have other people.
I
on.
hope so. I
Yeah,
hope you have Jesse
yeah.
on.
No.
Like, let him counter every single thing I've said.
I don't think that's gonna happen. Hey, if he wants to come on, I mean, absolutely, he can combat whatever.
Yeah.
But my whole thing is, like, if you're only taking one side, that's the reason why, dude. That's the reason why I just like despise these pages and these other shows, because it's like you're giving one side of the story.
Yep.
You don't give both sides. You speak into a camera, or you get on your keyboard, you know, and it's like, dude, talk to both sides, because you're not. And it's like, well, the other side won't talk to me. Well, it could be because you're talking about the fucking family.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
Well, and so it's interesting. So I was a very wild 20-year-old. You know, I thought that I could take on the world, combat it, go
is that
against
normal
it.
for a guy?
I think in some ways it's healthy. If you were taught manners and respect as a child,
Yeah.
I think that a questionable, break the system down 19-year-old is the best thing for America. Because let's be honest, the founding fathers, the oldest one was like 40 years old.
Yeah.
Half of them were 20-year-olds.
Yeah.
I believe that it's important. However, if you don't know how to channel and act like a man to
Yeah.
be able to communicate your disagreements without going to ad hominem attacks, or attacking their character and
Yep.
stuff like that, that's where I lose total respect for people's arguments when they go into whatever. When you start saying, when you have to attack someone's family. Now, listen, if you're married to someone that like murdered someone or stole $20 million from elderly people or something like that,
Yeah, you got it. You had that coming.
you had it coming.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about, a wife and 2 kids, or you're talking about, something else like that,
I tell you one. There's I call him a Kmart brand Johnny Sins real estate agent that lives in our community. You like that one. Anyway, and he got on and he mentioned my family in a comment on a post. And I kindly reached out to him, and I was very respectful with my text. I was like, hey man, don't ever talk about my family again. Like, just don't do that. You can attack me, you can attack my show, you can attack whatever. Don't bring up my family. And he's so stupid. He sent me back a text that literally referred to my family as innocent bystanders to my ego. Like, he was saying, it's not my fault that they're related to you, because of your ego is the reason why they're getting backlash right now. So he's basically justifying talking
actions.
about my family.
Mhm.
I got news for you. That is not the last conversation that me and that nerd are going to have. I got some R-rated dialogue and a lot of built-up anger that is definitely going to come out.
all right, we good?
Yeah. So you brought up some stuff about like the HR.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah, personnel issues, right? So they're having major personnel issues at the city right now. And this is, I think, we talked about leaders and bosses and stuff like that. I think this is a great example of the difference of quality leadership versus not. And you've been in the military. I'm sure you've had some leaders that you would never want to go into battle with, and you've had other ones that you're like, wow, great job.
Yeah.
And so you look at the people underneath you, your subordinates, you look at the people that answer to you every day, that have to deal with you on a daily basis. And it tells a lot about who you are as a person. If they love you, they want to call you in your personal time, they want to have barbecues with you, they want to celebrate your next kid, you're a great manager. If they are leaving the city in flocks, there's a problem. So right now, many people might not know this. There are 5 directors positions that are either open or are going to be open soon because the directors are leaving in mass because Vickie Gaynor is that bad of a manager. So you have Charles, who was the building director, so in charge of all permitting, in charge of building inspections, in charge of things like that, taken over for, especially after the whole Mike Gordon thing, and we'll get into that in a second, but he didn't feel comfortable working at the city anymore. There were, we had a couple conversations, and, I'm not going to say anything without his permission, but essentially you get to a point where you have to ask yourself, is it worth it? And he had some other stuff going on and personal reasons why he moved where he moved, but it was a good job at the city. Why would you leave it? One person. You go, okay, maybe there's some personnel conflicts in whatever happened. So let's look at person number 2. Amanda Richards, the planning manager, who at this point I do believe was bullied into a number of the things that she was required to say in front of the commission, as many people were by Vickie Gaynor and by the HR manager and several other stuff that was in, you can read it in Beverly's own words. I don't need to say it. But I do believe that she was pushed into saying certain things, and I think she's just over it and she's ready to retire. She's been talking about retirement, but it's odd because if you love what you do and you love the place that you do it, if you're going to leave after 10, 15 years, you're going to give 6 months notice. Hey, I'm going to be leaving at the end of the year. Let's go ahead and start looking for my replacement. You don't give 1 month's notice and then parachute out of there. That's a problem. Let's go to the IT director. That position just came up online. He only gave 2 weeks notice. Okay. Finance director, Kiki, she's leaving. She's training her replacement right now. That's 4 directors within 3 months that are leaving the city. Why? Again, once you get into a pattern, you have to start asking the question. So I look for evidence in the past, assuming that if a person or a zebra doesn't change their stripes.
Do you think that they're leaving because they know things that are going on that they don't want to be a part of, or?
I think it's a combination. So 2 things. One, let's say that you are an upstanding person that if there was a city clerk, you'd go tell them there's things going wrong, but the only person you can tell is the person doing them. So now you speak up, and if you speak up, you're bullied. So Beverly, in her accounts, says that on multiple occasions when she tried to give the information to Judy Tinder, when she would speak up at meetings, she had responsibilities taken away from her. Somebody was given to her as a number 2, as someone to work under her to help her with the finances during Hurricane Michael. So there's a ton of stuff going on. She was given a number 2 to help her out with it, but that number 2 answered directly to Vickie, not her. That's odd. It's very odd.
If you have somebody that's working under you, yeah.
Yeah. The person under me is going to report to my boss, and yet I'm supposed to hold them accountable? Seems weird. Okay. Then she goes into accounts where...
Not how the chain of command works.
Not how the chain of command works at all. But then we go into a lot of other things where she tells an account where she went into a room and it was just Ricky, Ramey, and Vickie. And Vickie says, why won't you open up these secondary accounts for Ricky, for the K9 unit and all these other things? And she goes, well, it's against protocol. We have to go to the commission first. Ricky, according to her, throws some pieces of paper across the room, storms out, slams the door, and Vickie goes, well, I guess if it's against policy, and then she gets written up. Then there's multiple write-ups when she spoke out at meetings. She eventually had parts
She got
of her
wrote up for speaking at a meeting?
speaking against Vickie. Well, it wasn't for speaking against Vickie. They found something else within a relative time frame of that meeting. Every time that someone speaks up, they're pulled in, and basically the system is used against them. Now, this is another reason why the committee is...
Citizen of Lynn Haven, right? She lives in Lynn
Yeah.
Haven?
So this is why we are asking, as part of our public records request, for every single HR complaint that has been made by Vickie, against a director, manager, or supervisor level in the last 5 years.
So I wonder how that works. If you work at the city as an employee, if they have any type of anything in their contract or anything part of their employment handbook that says that you can't speak at meetings because you're
No.
yeah, I didn't
No.
think so. I don't
It
think
was
there
because
is
she shared an opinion and asked a question that made Vickie look
against
bad.
her boss.
Yeah, that made Vickie look bad.
Yeah.
And so you see multiple
So
patterns in that.
retaliation.
Sure. I've talked to about 3 or 4 people that aren't ready to come forward yet that are former employees that at supervisor management or director levels that said the same thing happened to them. So we want to get these records. This is what you asked me the question before, when are you going to be prepared to send some of this stuff out? We have 60, 70, 80, 90% of the conversation. We want the receipts before we go
Absolutely.
doing it all because we don't want to be wrong.
Not only do you not want to be wrong, I mean, again, just being able to spout off at some of the stories, which they're probably true. That starts to get into that slander.
It adds up.
and-
So let's look at the HR complaints. Before Charles left, how many HR complaints were there against him? How many have been against Amanda? And can we tie those to whenever she disagreed with something on a development order? Can we look at the IT manager and any time that he did something that she didn't like, was there HR complaints against him? What sort of coercion is being performed in a somewhat legal manner against these people to keep them in line and keep them afraid so that they do what they're supposed to do? Because at the end of the day, we all need our jobs. As much as we say that we don't, most of us don't right now, especially with inflation, have enough savings to tell our bosses to fagoosh and then, spend 6 months trying to find another job.
Yeah.
Most of us don't. So whether we like it or not, unless we start looking for another job while we're at the one that we're at, it's very hard to move.
Yeah.
So most of these people, whether they like it or not, they could have gone on and been like, oh man, I'm so excited to have the city job. It's going to be great. They could have been under other administrations and it was great. And then you get the wrong administration and the wrong city manager. And all of a sudden now you're trapped. Now you're afraid to say things. Now at a single look from Vickie Gaynor, you just instantly stop talking during a commission meeting and say, well, we'll look into that and never look into it. There's so many little things that go on that, again, might not be illegal, but is this the way that we want the city
That
run?
is, especially when it comes to retaliation in a workplace. That's employment law.
Yeah, and there's about like 5 or 6 counts of that in Beverly's whistleblower accounts. And again, you always take something with a grain of salt when you hear it for the first time and go, okay.
Three sides.
Yeah.
3 sides of every story.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I mean, even if you can't deny those receipts that you're talking about, right? So
Yeah.
like if you're sitting there saying someone got written up and the day prior you got up at a city meeting and you spoke out against your boss, but it's also a weird dynamic because that boss is not just your boss, that you're a citizen of the city.
So here's what I've always said about anyone who works for government, whether you're elected or whether you are, paid or an employee. You are a servant to the residents who live within your jurisdiction. You're a servant. You should be serving them. Your goal should be to be the best servant for them because you're getting paid to be. So if I serve at let's say Longhorn Steakhouse, right? If I want to stay, if I want to make good tips, if I want to do anything else, your drinks are filled. Those biscuits aren't going dry. Like you got what you want when you go there. My T-bone is hot because it hasn't sat underneath the window for too long. It's good service. I don't have to, as a restaurant owner, I don't have to give you an SOP on how to be a good servant because you understand the role when you take it.
Mm-hmm.
Vickie Gaynor, every employee, don't care what city that you're at, is a servant to the people. When you become a bad servant because you don't care about the people, you care about your own trajectory. I mean, like you said, egos. You went from being a clerk to the city manager in a couple of years. I mean, you beat the FBI. If you did do something illegal and you beat the FBI, imagine the ego that you've got to have. Now you think, well, what, some employee is going to tell me what to do. Some citizen is going to come up here and say that I don't know the ordinances. Some person's going to come up here and say that this development order doesn't pass. Well, I say it passes. It doesn't need to be criminal, but to be negligent.
Yeah.
But some of it could be criminal.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
I mean, and again, the story, I mean, and I don't discredit anybody's story until there's a reason not to.
Absolutely.
But that's the thing. It's like,
yep. So let's go out and get those receipts. Let's do the public records request. Because here's the thing. If there was a city clerk, I could go to the city clerk and within 10 minutes have that kind of information, because the clerk knows where every record is. You made a great statement. Vickie's phone was going off, always going off, right? She's too busy managing the city to
be able to do that.
To be able to do that.
Well, even if you had a clerk, I mean, it still takes time to get that stuff.
It does.
So,
but if a clerk is organized,
they'll have
so
it.
much easier.
Yeah.
There's a big difference, having gone through engineering school, there's a big difference on every single part, every single revision, everything is labeled out in the name of the document. I know the revision, the part, the assembly that it goes to, everything else like that, if you name it properly. Same thing with the search for public records. If I know where they're all at, it's easy to go find them.
Yeah.
If I have no clue where half of this stuff is, it's going to take forever. So it's interesting. Let's go back to the Grease Pro. So let's
go back to this real quick, and then we'll move on to Grease Pro. So the recall has not officially started.
The signing of signatures has not officially started, but we are officially a political committee now.
Yeah, I get that. You guys are waiting to get those signatures started until you have all receipts.
No.
Oh, you're not?
No.
Okay.
No, we're just going to be releasing fireworks the whole time. Like, we're going to be your redneck cousin that's just going down, just shooting those things off. As we get them, they're coming out.
Okay.
We're not going to hold back. But we do believe that there's a responsibility to the city to not hold this thing up.
So why haven't you started getting signatures yet?
Well, you have to become a committee first. Yeah. So you have to become a legal entity. You have to go through, the clerk, and then she has to transfer it over to supervisor elections. Actually, that process went pretty quick. I will give Vickie that. She didn't hold up the process. She was a professional. She did what she was supposed to do. We are now officially a political committee within 2 weeks. Fine. Okay. We're going to be onboarding a lawyer here in the next couple of days. He's great. He has familiarity. I'm not going to say who it is because we haven't hired him yet, but
I have an idea.
He, let's say he's done recalls before.
Yeah.
Yeah. And probably by the time that this goes live, we'll have already announced it. So, but he's great. He worked with Marco Rubio. He was a parliamentarian for the House legislator. I mean, the guy knows his stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, you're going to have that.
You're going to have to have it.
Yeah.
We've for all the printing that we want to do, for all the media marketing that we want to do, for everything else like that, it takes time to bring everything on. Then we didn't feel that it was prudent or responsible to bring volunteers on until we were an entity. So we didn't want to bring them into an organization without the organization existing first.
Tracking.
So it's kind of like, if you're going to go to war, you got to fly all the tanks in before you can go to war.
Yeah.
You can bomb the hell out of stuff from the air, but you can't control the ground without your logistics. So we're getting that logistics in place. I mean, if we've got to go out and get 1,500 signatures in 30 days, you need to be coordinated and organized before you go out there. And we're very coordinated and very organized. There's a lot of moving parts on the back end to this that people aren't seeing. So they're like, it's just this crazy guy that complained about a Grease Pro getting up here. Okay, maybe it's one other person who's kind of rich, who's got a grudge against it. No, there's like 15, 20 people working. I mean, it's not a small effort, but there are so many people, and I know you kind of want to talk about this. There are so many people in our group that are afraid for them to be associated with this because they're afraid of their kids getting, their 16-year-old child getting pulled over on the way home from work just to be harassed. Yeah. They're worried about, a cocaine vial being found 5 miles away from their house and their ex-boyfriend's, safe, and them being charged with potential distribution. They're afraid of just being harassed in general. I mean, Mike Gordon, the one that's suing the city over, the whole thing with Vickie's house and the subsequent fallout that occurred. He's afraid to even drive anywhere near Ohio and 9th. He's afraid to go within 10 city blocks of it because he truly believes that because of what's going on, he could be attacked. He's that afraid. The city employees obviously are leaving in exponential numbers because they're afraid of being in the environment anymore. You have people that we truly, we've only got 400 likes on our page right now. I think we're up to like 430, 440, something like that as of recording. And a lot of people are going to ask, well, if you only have that much support, I volunteer and work with people that have told me outright, I'm not going to like the page, but I'm going to sign your petition. I got 8 family members that are going to sign it. But we don't want to put our names out there publicly because we're afraid of retribution. I don't care if it's going to happen. I care about the fact that the citizens believe that there is such a culture in this city that they think it could.
There's always the possibility. But I
Sure.
think that the main thing is and so this goes into lukewarm people on anything, right?
Mhm.
Like you can sit there and you can say that you believe in something.
Sure.
Well, it's like saying, I believe, what's a good example? I'm a Christian,
Sure.
but I don't want to tell anybody I'm a Christian. Like, it's just kind of like, it's, to me, I'm a different breed, so is Kendall. I mean, when we believe in something, we don't have a problem
Full
saying
heart.
it.
I mean, I'm
Like,
obviously here.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. You put your face out there.
Yep.
I mean, if there's anybody, it's you, dude.
Yeah. It's
So-
actually funny when we were in the commission.
but if you're walking around
Yeah.
and hey, listen, man, like everything's good. Come on in. The water's fine.
And that's what I'm trying
Then,
to get people to understand is you don't have to be the first one, but certainly be the 1500 one by the 30 day of the signature petition,
Yeah.
right? No, but there's actually a ton of stuff
I
that's going to be
honestly
coming
do
up.
believe that is a. I mean, people feel the way that they feel. You know, if they talk about feelings. But the whole thing is it's like you're either behind something and you believe in it and you don't care. Who knows?
Yep.
Or I mean, how do you think this country was won, dude? Like, it didn't come from people being like, "Hey, King George is a really bad guy, and I support you. Go fight."
Yeah.
No. You got to be the person that's picking up a musket and you're going to go do the job.
Listen,
Like-
nowadays, the war of opinion in this country isn't going to be won by firebombing Tesla
Nah.
or locking off a street or a highway or something like that. It's going to be won by the people that can go in and educate themselves.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be a policy person like I do. You can be a smart individual and go into a city commission and go, hey, y'all said you were going to have this project done by March.
That's what I was going to say. No. Heroes are not people that do research and type on keyboards. Heroes are the guys that, whether or not I agree with your stances on this stuff or not.
Sure.
But I respect you because the fact that you're like, no. This is how I feel. This is what I believe. And I'm putting it out there in public. And I don't care what anybody else thinks about it. But this is what I think about it. Please stand behind this because this is something that needs to be done.
Yep.
That's doing something. Talking about something, educating yourself on something, that goes from here to the door.
Sure.
But you have to be that person that is going to be that outlet that is going to and not be afraid to go into a Publix, a Walmart, wherever you go pick your kids up from school, all of that, and say, hey, this is something that's bad. This is something that's going on. And I would really appreciate support on this because if we don't get this done, this is the future in which I see it.
Yep.
And people always want to wonder why election results don't happen. Oh, I'm so mad because this person didn't get elected. I'm so mad.
What
because
did
of
you
that.
do?
What did you do to help? Were you out knocking on doors?
Well, and I'll take it a step
no,
further.
you weren't.
I'll take it a step further. If you're going to stand on your mountain, you also need to be you need to be enough of a grown up, or you need to be mature enough in your life to be able to say, you know what, Vickie, if you come back and perform a financial forensic audit and you go through the last 6 years of stuff and you show me that there wasn't one hair out of order, I will get up at that commission meeting and say, you know what, I apologize for any accusation or any thought that I had because you proved me wrong and I respect you for doing it. If you aren't willing to do that as a city manager to prove me wrong, then I'm going to question you every single time.
What is the reasoning behind why they won't do an audit? It just costs too much?
They do audits, but to do a forensic audit to really dial down costs a lot of money. So you can have the
How
checks.
much money are we talking?
Oh, I mean, it could be $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 every year.
Oh, shit.
How deep do you want to go?
Well, how deep do you want to go? You're the one that wants the audit.
I mean,
What audit would suffice? Like, be enough? You want like the top tier everything? That's what you want?
I want you to go through. I want what would be done by.
I didn't know that it cost that much money. Now I know why they don't do it.
A lot. Yeah, any consulting does, man. Please. A lawyer getting involved is $300 an hour to begin with. To start.
That's a cheap one.
Yeah. Good lawyers are $750 to $1,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was about to say.
When you're getting a former, USA or you're getting a former state's attorney or something like that, they're expensive.
Yeah.
So
but when you start talking about $600,000, I understand why the city didn't do it.
And I understand it.
No.
But when there's offers or options, when there is the ability to say, as a commission, we need more information about this.
Doesn't an audit also take like 6 months?
Oh, sure. It could take 2 years.
So, okay. Well, so I got a question for you.
Sure.
So if they signed up to do an audit, and they paid $650,000, $700,000,
sure,
it's going to take 2 years to do that.
Potentially, depending on what they find. It could take 6 months because nothing's out of place.
So here's the deal: if they decided they were going to do that today, a lot of this is skepticism, right? We're saying that Vickie probably did something wrong.
Let's take out the
because my argument on it now is if it takes, well, let's just say the longest 2 years, and they pay $650,000. Vickie, they finally get rid of her because all of the noise, and then it turns out that nothing that she did was wrong, but yet she got fired.
Well, she would have gotten fired for a dozen of things. It doesn't just have to be the money, but. Let's say that they do. The commission has the ability. So do you know about our contract, how it's set up? Right now, to get rid of Vickie, it only needs a 3-2 vote. But if she gets a 3-2 vote, so if there are two objectors, she gets to keep 40% of a portion of the remainder of her contract. If there's a 4-1 vote, she gets to keep 20%. If it's a 5-0, that's when she's fired, with the city not having to pay her any more money. They renegotiated that into her contract quite recently when Jesse Nelson was mayor.
What did they renegotiate?
They added that portion of her
so all of
contract
that.
Yeah.
Because they knew that it was probably going to happen?
Well, at least if you help Jesse out, he's going to scratch your back and you got a parachute left. You know you're always going to get at least one no vote for your...
So you're saying that there were other things, not just that?
Sure.
Not just the money aspect?
Yeah. So if you're a city manager and, you're looking at all the things and you say, you know what, it's not worth it to me, and I leave. But let's say there were no criminal things done, but there was negligence in the way that you set stuff up. There were buckets of money that were overspent, that weren't accounted for, that were underspent, that weren't accounted for. It was just a mismanagement, not in a illegal way, but in a, you just suck at your job way.
And there's proof of all of that.
If we can get the financial documents.
Okay, so again, and I'm asking you the question.
From an audit.
What proof do you have that Vickie has not done her job and she has been negligent?
Well, I mean, just based off of the whistleblower accounts that are now public. Because we're talking about public evidence.
Yeah. So what proof other than hearsay do you have that Vickie needs to be fired?
It's a great question. If we get the HR records and we can prove that she is being abusive to employees, if you can get the financial records or the images of checks, and we can prove that even the 2 that Beverly Waltrip said were signed by her and flagged by the bank for improper signatures, that's wire fraud.
So if you have proof
Yes.
that the people that are talking,
Mm-hmm.
then there's a reason to fire her.
Yes.
But there's no proof. You're right now.
The commission.
That's all I'm asking. Is like, what proof is out there? And I was really hoping you were going to have something, because I'm like, what proof? Like, where's the proof? I want the proof. Like, where's the proof that she has not done her job?
Yeah.
That she deserves to be fired?
Well, I say, let's go through the records.
Okay, I mean that's fine. I'm just
So here's my thing. I can say all day that I've talked to about 12 city employees
Yeah.
that I know the ins and outs of where money was going for the most part, that I would, if I had the financial records, I would know where to look. However, if the statements from Beverly and Judy are to be believed, where documents weren't provided at the request of a commissioner,
if that's true, I believe she needs to be freaking fired. But where is the like? That's my only thing. Is a lot of these things. it's
so
kinda
who should be holding her accountable?
Yeah. Well, no, we've already discussed that. I believe that there should be a clerk.
Forget a clerk. Forget a clerk. In this moment, the way that the commission is set
Well,
up,
yeah, the commission needs to.
who should be holding her accountable? Okay, so let's say Judy Tinder's back on the job, and she's got a second every single time she brings a motion. Jamie's going to second, and every single time Jamie motions, she's going to second. So at least there's a discussion now, rather than Jamie getting the 4-1, fagoosh.
Yeah.
Okay. They can ask all these questions. They can compel through motion Vickie to be required to turn things over.
Mm-hmm.
But unless they're going to go into the records rooms themselves, how do they know everything's been turned over? That's what a forensics audit does.
Yeah.
So going back to my public records request for Grease Pro, there was a time when I requested all documents, including emails, including forms, including engineering documents and everything like that, all documents related to the Grease Pro development order between this date and this date. I was provided the overview page, and I was provided like 2 forms on the first round. I sent an email back. I go, this isn't everything. I requested everything. They sent me 9 more documents. I said, you had at least 1 or 2 TRO meetings. You had at least a couple of, back and forths, emails with the engineers. It happens every single time. There is no way that Robert Carroll brought a 100% perfect project on day 1. It almost never happens. I don't care any engineering firm that you go to. I requested all documents. I think it took me 3 or 4 requests directly to Vickie Gaynor going, I know there's more to this. Where is it? For me to finally get enough to put an analysis together. If I'm Joe Schmo citizen and I don't know any better and I say I want all documents and I only get 3 documents, I'm going to assume that the clerk of the city ensured that all documents were provided to me if that was the legal request made.
Yeah.
So in that one instance, I can show without a reasonable doubt that my public records request was not fully submitted until I went and fought for it. Those TROs and that information that I was given on the 3rd round is what helped me formulate 2/3 of my argument, because now I had the actual back and forth between the city's engineers and the developers' engineers. Mm-hmm. And I could actually go in and do the research now. But without it, I couldn't do it. It took me 3 requests. It should have only taken 1. So if that's what's being given to the commission upon request, we already have accounts from both Judy said it happened and Beverly said it happened. So now that's 2 people said the same event happened. Just based on that and what I know of my personal accounts that I'm willing to talk about right now, that's now 2 occasions where not enough information was provided to truly make an informed opinion or state it as fact. So if we don't have all of the evidence, and I said we wanted 99% before we go public, we might have 80%, but you fail to provide us with that other 10 to 20%, that is the bad parts. You fail to provide it to the commission. You fail to provide it to auditors. We don't know.
Yeah.
So until someone comes in and scrapes the metadata and looks through the emails and goes, you said this was approved, but it's not attached to a purchase order. Where did it come from? We know it came from the Parks and Recs budget, or we know it came from, roads and bridges budget.
Yeah.
And we know that you have some authority to do this, but why did we hire this contractor without an RFP? Why didn't we do these things? Maybe some of that comes up in an audit, maybe it doesn't.
Yeah.
But you don't know what you don't know until you get all the information. So if all the information isn't being provided up front and he can't prove that it's all the information, you need someone like a Doge to go through and actually use technology to go, well, actually, there's 32 other emails with this title, with Grease Pro in the body of the information. Here's 32 other emails that we didn't give you. Here's the correspondence between a mayor and this person through the mayor's email, or here's the correspondence between the finance director and Vickie going, don't give us this information. But unless you know the title of the email, the date and time that it was sent, or you ask for a blanket request, you'll never get the email. And that is document transfer 101. Every lawyer will tell you, you want to screw up someone's day who's a new lawyer, send them 50 boxes of documents and hope they don't have the money to pay a paralegal to go through it. If we don't have a city clerk, if we don't have an auditing firm doing forensics auditing, it's one thing to balance the budget, because budgets can be moved around a little bit, but still, if you're supposed to spend $1 million and you spent $1 million, should I question it anymore? Because Parks budget and Parks spent $1 million and there's new trees and there's maintenance, but the commission didn't approve you putting in that sidewalk. You just decided to do it. It was supposed to be spent to go repair the
Yeah, I mean, that goes into what we were saying
facilities.
earlier about the fact of like, I don't even think that was one of the things that Jamie talked about. Sam's talked about it before, about how it's like, so like, what do we approve and what don't we approve? What comes to us and what doesn't come to us? Because there's certain things. I don't know if I can put this out there, but, well, no, I think I can. So I just had a conversation with Sam the other day about like city roads and stop signs.
Yeah.
Like apparently they're supposed to vote on that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like
Speed bumps.
So check this out. You use Publix in Lynn Haven. Remember that stop sign that
Yep.
sits there? Well, they took it down for the longest time.
Yep. And
And
people still stop.
the stop sign's back.
Yeah, I know.
They put the stop sign back, but then the other sign that's there that says constant traffic flow
Yeah.
is still there. So that sign is still there, but the stop sign is now back, and they didn't change that out. But the question is that something we were supposed to approve? Is that something that was supposed to come to us?
It's a change in traffic design.
yeah. So he
And
was
it's on
kinda
private property.
Yeah, so well, no, that's a road, dog.
That's
That's
a
a city
road?
road. Yes. That's a city road that goes back there. That's not I know it seems like it's a parking lot. That's a city road.
Well, then there should be parking off of it.
But the whole thing about it
If we're going to make that argument. I
Yeah.
mean.
Well, but the whole thing is like, is this something that we were supposed to be voting on? Like, is this because this is
Sure.
something that got added back? But man, I think you hit on everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'll say this as, kind of a closing argument. There's going to be more stuff coming out as we
Yeah.
go through this. It's going to be a long process. So it's not just the first petition. Then we go
Yeah.
through a whole process. Then there's a second petition
petition.
with
Yeah.
Jesse's statement on it. Once we get enough of those, then we actually have to go to an election where the first question is asked is, do you want to recall the mayor? And you have to get 50% of the vote. And then And then on the same ballot, whoever ran for that position,
Yeah.
if there's 50 plus one on the yes, let's recall him,
Yep.
then whoever wins the second question on that ballot becomes the new mayor. It could be him again. Now, that'd be crazy to happen because why would you vote him out and then re-vote him in?
Yep.
But it's a 6 to 8 month process.
Yeah. That's why my whole thing was like, dude, like, why not just wait it out for it? But I've played devil's advocate
Sure.
on a lot.
Yeah.
Some things I might not even really, agree with, but I threw it out there anyway.
That's okay.
Because it's an argument.
Yeah, no.
Man, dude, I'm an entertainer.
Hey, absolutely. Razzle and dazzle them, baby.
The argument on it is it's a 6 to 8 month process.
Yeah.
Why not just wait until the next go around instead of wasting taxpayers' dollars on elections?
What negligence and harm do you think can happen in 2 years if we don't?
I don't know. How much do you think that they vote on that's going to cost it that? Like, cost that big of a thing? Now, hold on. So I have my own theory on, remember how I said when we have a belief system, we believe in it?
Yeah.
Sometimes, so I'm the type of person that does something to prove a point
Sure.
for the future, where it's like, hey,
We're not going to put up with the crap.
we're not going to put up with you.
Yep.
We will vote you out. So you're making an example out of somebody.
Sure.
So if that's the answer, I think it's great. But if the answer is how much, he's just one commissioner.
you got 4 other ones up there. So if things go south, it goes on them too.
It absolutely does. And they have that responsibility. So they have a choice, right?
Yeah.
Our entire movement, campaign, everything else like this may not even be necessary, or may not have been necessary, had every one of those commissioners stood up with a backbone and done their damn jobs. But when you have a mayor who is up there bullying commissioners, bullying anybody that he can, with a city manager who, according to statements, has a history of bullying employees to get them to walk the line on what they say so that things get approved the way that they want them approved, where there was a potential budget change without being notified for a raise for the police chief during the whole corruption investigation going on, while everything else is going on like that. And you're going to tell me that a mayor who is basically managing the flow of it, because if he was just a regular commission and he was just talking from the bleacher seats, it wouldn't be a big deal. But when he is chairing the commission meetings and pacing the tempo and managing the whole meeting so that you can or can't say things as a commissioner, so that you do or don't feel emboldened to actually come up and say stuff at the meetings, where he allows certain things to go on that shouldn't be, or denies motions from being finalized or anything like that. When you have all of that going on, now you have someone who is manipulating the other people that were voted on by residents. And that's the problem. He can say, I've turned a new leaf and everything else like that. And if the citizens believe him, James said the same thing. If the citizens believe him, that he has changed, that he's found the light, and that the problems are solved, then we don't get the signatures. But if he hasn't changed, or he's just putting on a good act, and behind the scenes, things are still getting moved around in budgets, or things are still getting done, or as small as something like a road change isn't getting approved and someone has an accident there, and the commission didn't have time to weigh in on it. Or you have something like a Grease Pro at 390 where they're already over their limit for average daily vehicles on 390. And Harvard has over 1,200 homes in it. And Harvard is only one of 2 entrances. And you have all that traffic flow there. Is it prudent and responsible to jam through something without going back to engineers and asking them the questions? And that's where you really have to ask yourself, is he being a prudent manager of the city and everything like that? And we don't think so.
Have you talked to the majority of commissioners about this?
I've talked to a number of them when they're willing to talk and if they're willing to talk about it. Some of them have brought up the fact that they're given not instructions, but they're kind of told the way things are so commissions have meetings, right? Or commissioners have meetings with city management. You're only allowed to have one commissioner in a place at a time, according to sunshine laws. So for the management to brief them, I mean, they almost spend an entire day briefing them sometimes in certain cities, because it's 1 2-hour meeting after another 2-hour after another 2-hour. You have directors in there. It's a pain in the butt. But it allows the commissioners to ask questions of everybody in an organized fashion so that they're prepared for what they need to know up on the board. If you're getting bad advice in those meetings, you're being told that the liability of the city is more important than anything, or if a commercial property owner is more likely to sue you than 100 residents because they don't have the money, or you're being told that, yes, we've done all the checks that need to be done.
That kind of nonsense is just, that's ridiculous. If a commissioner told you that?
Potentially. I don't want to throw him or her under the bus, but yes, there was a conversation had.
Oh, there's a big company that might sue us, and they've got more money than 100 residents.
Yep. So if you don't find a reason to say no, even though maybe a giant 45-minute long report was given to you about like 9 different ordinances that you violated, including ADA.
So that guy doesn't, or girl, guy, whatever, they're done. They need to be.
Maybe they're next.
They need to be.
Yeah.
You start saying stupid crap like that, that's like, you're not for the people, you're for.
Forget if you say it. If it's actually happening.
Well, yeah, because you're saying that this is the reason why. Oh, we didn't stand up for the citizens who have a problem with this because we're scared of getting sued by this company. Dude, Come on now. Come on. That's not why you're in office.
You have 5 massive lawsuits against you right now as a city. You think those are less liability than some development having to go back and change a few things?
That makes me sick.
It should. It should make everyone sick.
That's stupid.
If you're not
That
getting-
100% is a thing. Okay. Yeah, that's.
I don't have the voice recording of it occurring.
Yeah, no, I hit you pretty good on the proof thing. but
It's very hard when an individual comes to you in earnesty and without you dragging it out of them, willingly offers that information. It is very hard for me to believe that you are faking it with that type of story as a commissioner. Right? And so again, we get back to criminally negligent. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. But is it in the best interest of the city for the city to continue to operate in this manner if the citizens believe that they deserve a republic and not a dictatorship? So my argument to the commissioners right now, grow a pair. Be wolves. Be unrelenting in your questions, and until the receipts are in your hands, don't give up. Show up at Vickie's office every single day and demand it. Every question that a citizen has, run it down until it's exhausted. And if you are getting any backlash, go on podcasts like this, go on the news channel and be like, hey, bring it up at a commission meeting. Each commissioner gets their own time to talk about whatever they want. If you want to go on a 4-hour rant about what happened to you and what you've been forced to do, you have the right to do it as a commissioner because that is your time. Use it.
Yep.
Start asking for the things. And if employees are coming to you and telling you that, hey, your full request wasn't given, then if your police chief isn't willing to investigate that, you have a problem with the police chief. If your city manager is the one doing it, you have a problem with your city manager. And if the mayor isn't calling them all out, but instead is helping them get raises and throw things under the rug so that they're not big problems, then you got a problem with your mayor.
Zach, dude, it's almost 11 o'clock. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, man.
I respect what you're trying to do.
And I might not have
I
convinced
think-
you.
Well, again, it's one of those things where like I'm not gonna put my anything into the bucket until like I have that stuff. Like
Sure.
right, like I want to know. I mean, I get it. With Jesse, the arguments about how he treats citizens, how he's treated commissioners. But then again, and this is going to go on to something you just said a second
Sure.
ago. None of these commissioners are complaining about it, and they're big boys and girls.
Yep.
So like, if I'm a big like, and
And hey, that commission might not be the same in 2 years.
Seeing Jamie, jump up and be like, "Hey, man, like, no, I'm gonna fight back. I'm gonna bite back when you bite." Like, and when he sees something wrong, he's gonna speak up. That's part of being an elected official is you have to speak up.
It's your job.
If you just sit there like the Manchurian candidate and you're just like, yep, cool, yep, and then just do that,
Mm-hmm.
and then a lot of people, I think some of the arguments that are out there are like, well, when it comes to city business, and it's like, no, this is city business. This is city business.
Yeah.
If this is a big deal, you need to make it a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, they're not making it a big deal.
No.
So which should tell you something about any sitting commissioner that sits up there and they're okay with it. They allow this to happen. I mean,
Yep.
Pat Perno, Sam Peebles, freaking, Jamie Warwick and, Judy Tender, they got to be able to voice this to Jesse in a public setting. I mean,
Absolutely.
we talked a little bit about the Sunshine Law earlier. You changed my mind on it. But it's the whole thing of in public, you need to call him out and just be like,
Yep.
hey, guy, let that freaking person speak.
Yep.
And like, if he gets boisterous with you, you look at him back in the eye and be like, hey, dude, I'm a commissioner just like you.
Yep. I put my pants on the exact same way you do, buddy.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
yep.
And so, but you got to have people that, but man, dude, we don't have fighters anymore. You
No.
know, Jamie Warwick, you know, that's one of the things that, you know,
He's bloody on round 8 right now. Like,
whether or not I agree with his position on something or not, what I can say about him is that he's going to fight for what he believes in.
Yep.
He just is.
Yeah.
And so, and some people are like, well, I'm going to just pick and choose my battles. And it's like, that's cool. Like, I play chess,
Sure.
you know, but you're playing with people's tax dollars. You're playing with people's lives. You're playing around with other stuff. So go play your video game because and choose your battles.
Yep.
But here you're representing the people.
Well, and let's
so,
make it
like,
more important.
If
this
the
was
majority of the people, but then again, then you have to play the other side of that, where you have to say, well, what is the majority of the people saying? Because as of right now, I'm going to tell you, the majority of the people. You know what though? I think the majority of the people probably have an issue with Jesse's attitude
for their own personal reasons. And again, my reason for doing this is different than a number of people, but I'm going to tell you right now. I mean, I know a lot of people that work in governments around here. I know a lot of people that own businesses around here. I know a lot of people. I mean, we have people working on our campaign that are like, if they ever found out that it was my business, I'm sure I'd lose my business license some way, figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
You know, so they're prepared to sign. They're not prepared to put their name on it. And it's a weird thing up here. It wasn't that
that's
way.
not weird. I mean, that's just human nature. We have people that live on social media and they're scared to, like, perfect example. I had a guy come out and said a bunch of crap about me on social media.
Yeah.
And I ran into him at Publix the other day.
Yep.
And then I was like, I was walking down this aisle and I was like, that's that dude. And I went to go turn around and my daughter came right behind me. And I was like, you know what? What would how do I want my kids to grow up? Do I want them to be like, oh, just stay away from people, don't cause a scene? That person, no, I went down there. I made eye contact with him.
Yeah.
I called him a name when I walked by him. It was very, very vulgar. And it was just like one of those things where it was like, yeah, you sit online, you get behind your comments, but then you see me in public and you don't have a freaking spine.
Well, come on,
it's just like,
because mom's not there to bring you dino nuggets to make you feel better. So
the days of going and punching somebody in the mouth for saying something stupid about you or your family are over, which sucks. And that's the reason why you have people that sit up on a commission that don't speak up.
Yep. And so if you're going to get up there, do know, I don't care what city, county it is, anywhere in this country. If you are going to get up there, I don't care what your political background is. I don't care what your belief system is. If you aren't going to be passionate for the citizens of your municipality, don't run.
If there's one thing that you and me agree on 100% is what you just said.
Yeah.
Dude, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, man.
Appreciate it.
Great time.